Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find out more about what we do at officehours.global. First hour is general discussion about media or virtual production, whatever questions that may come up. Second hour is usually something we want to spend a little bit more time on, and we oftentimes come back to doing Ruthless reviews. Today we'll do them on our microphones and talk about our pipelines and talk about what's working and not working in our as we keep on making it better. And usually it's a great opportunity to just learn more about training our ears towards creating great audio for our shows. Now, tomorrow, maybe a special event. Stay tuned. Watch this channel. You might want to watch my Twitter feed today. And then on Thursday, the team from Belfast, the Belfast Method team, everyone is coming in. I don't know everyone, but a group of folks from the Belfast Method are going to come in and talk about how the Belfast Method works. It's going to be a great show, and that's on Thursday. That's our second hour. On Friday, we're talking about shoestring production. A lot of times we talk about how to do a show with 50 people or how to do a show with distributed all over the world, but how do you do a show by yourself? We're going to talk a little bit about that and how to do shoestring budgets. And then finally, Saturday, we're still doing education. We know it's the 25th. You don't have to remind me. You don't have to ask me. I know, but we're still doing it. So we did a vote among the educators and said, do you want to come back and have this discussion? And it was 3-1 yes. So we're going to give it a shot. So we'll still do that from 8 to 10 on Saturday morning. All right, let's go ahead and jump into the questions, Bill.
And our first one this morning comes from Rupert McRae on the panel from Dallas, Texas. And Rupert says, the NAB Show 2022 is open for registration. Who's planning to attend?
Chris?
I think that NAB 2022 is going to be as successful and awesome as NAB 2021. I still don't think it's going to happen. When is it happening? Is it April?
Yeah, end of April,
Yeah,
I think.
there's no way it'll happen. I'll call it right now.
Oh, wow. Go ahead, Noah.
I'm still kind of split on this. Really, the only thing that would get me there is if Blackmagic doesn't release the 2ME upgrade before NAB, because I would expect it to be out at NAB. And so that would be my motivating thing. I'm going to buy 2 of those switchers specifically for that upgrade channel, and to be there in person, see it, talk to the engineers. That's going to be very beneficial to me.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
I'm going to do you one better. I'm actually going to be going to CES 2022, so that's going to be the deciding factor of how I'm going to be treating my conferences from here on. As yesterday, I bought my plane ticket because they came out with the email saying, yeah, it's definitely happening. So I'm pretty sure it's going to happen. It's just a question of how it's going to happen, how they're going to also bring in the amplify for the virtual side.
I need an echo thing going, Super Spreader 2.0. So give it and CES was the original. CES was the original Super Spreader. I mean, that's how it got all over the world. So they're like, hey, hold my beer. Go ahead, Alex.
The funny thing is, when I said, oh, I'll answer this question, I voted it up. I thought, well, that's October. It should be okay by then, because I already associated NAB with the rescheduled one. And now this does feel soon, but it's somebody in the UK who can't get in a 1-hour car drive and go and meet somebody for lunch at an interesting place that has a useful private conversation. It is useful. It feels to me to be able to talk to people without having PR people over their shoulder or other stuff, and so people can speak a little bit more freely. So I want something like that. It would be nice if it was. It doesn't have to be NAB. It would be nice if it was a kind of semi-organized thing. I mean, obviously there is the Hollywood Post Alliance, Hollywood Production Alliance technical thing, but that's quite soon as well. I think that's in February. I'd like to come over for something. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I think that I'm just slowly sinking into the fact that I prefer the hours that we spend with manufacturer, with brands than going to NAB. So I think that that's the issue. And I think that also I don't think I'm the only one talking to folks that now that I'm used to not going to big things with lots of people around, I was never really that excited about it, but now I'm super not excited about it. And I think that that's magnified some people's, introspective of your introvert tendencies. So I think that my days of going to conferences is probably over. Next question.
James Hutchison in Dublin, Ireland is up next. And James says, as Office Hours 2.0 comes closer to fruition, does the panel feel that the show is losing some of its serendipity?
Go ahead, Noah.
I don't think so. I think what happens, at least for me, is my schedule ebbs and flows, right? So like October, November, I was super busy. I wasn't able to participate much in office hours. December's lightened up, right? So I got to re-experience this and come back. But even in that small window of a few months, obviously we can keep maturing. And then if you look at the 600 plus shows, you see the progression happening. So I think as a whole, we're getting better and more efficient, and we're better at what we're doing. And then I think just over time, more people will be involved. So I don't know if it's going to lose serendipity, like you're saying.
Go ahead, Chris.
I think in a lot of ways, and I might be saying this wrong, but this is a mathematical problem with multiple variables, okay? One variable is how do you manage human beings, the wetware we talk about? How do you manage the hardware? How do we make all this software work? And I think that everything is changing. And I think that there is a different feel to what these hours are like, but there's 23 other hours in the day that are very casual, very fresh, very open discussion. And I think that some people miss that level of casualness in these hours, but these hours are evolving into something different. So, and evolving is the main thing. It literally is changing like week to week. So there's a lot of ways that after hours and office hours can scratch that itch.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't start tightening office hours until after hours existed. And that was very purposeful. Like there was a yin and yang that had to happen there, where we have a show that a lot of people that we think that more and more people want to watch, but it really needs to be to the point a little bit. Whereas the meandering is something that is really, really good in after hours. and if you haven't jumped into after hours, it's an incredible conversation. Like it's just this, and it is the epitome of kind of well-managed, slow content. People are just talking about stuff, kind of figuring stuff out. It is very meandering, but we give everybody time to kind of fiddle with things and just kind of work through ideas and everything else. And it's great radio to listen to and then jump in every once in a while. It's really awesome. And so I think that that's where we want to have that kind of more informal thing. And then for office hours, I'm going to keep on tightening it up a little bit to not much more than it is, but as we start building the graphics, we're preparing it for a larger audience. And, you know, and it's kind of the front end. Now I have to admit that I started in alternative rock. I heard this every single time a band crossed over. Like, you know, the band, you know, every time the band went from alternative to pop, all the fans were like, you know, like, I mean, Nirvana had a t-shirt. I can't repeat it because it's a clean show, but they had a t-shirt and on the back of it, I remember getting the t-shirt, and on the back of it, it had a whole bunch of like all the things they used to call bands who went to big labels. And then when they went to the big label, they were like, yeah, that's us. So, you know, so I think that, you know, to get to the next level, we have to create a different kind of, you know, not a different kind of show, but evolve the show towards, you know, what makes sense for a larger audience. And I think that's, but after hours is always there and will continue to expand to let people still have that kind of more community driven, rolling conversation. Go ahead, Chris.
So are you saying that office hours, oh wow, there's a lot of me, that office hours is kind of our Joshua tree? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. We call it Joshua Tree.
I will say
Joshua Tree Project.
One of the most interesting days in after hours was I believe the first day that I think his name is Todd Rains, the wood turner. He came in and he had a couple of questions. Hey, does this work? Does this look? And all of a sudden it was like, what do you do, Todd? Oh, let me show you. And all of a sudden, the next thing you know, there was 45 minutes of him demoing what he does. And it was this really cool sort of natural, organic thing. And all of a sudden, what's super interesting is when certain things happen and all of a sudden, boop, 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 other windows start popping open. And it's like, oh, I want to hear what's going on. Well, and it's so cool to watch the screen kind of come to life as something cool happens.
That's why unless I have other meetings, you'll see my thing. I'm not always there, but I have my speaker open all the time in my office when you see my thing there. And sometimes I'm out of the room or whatever and other things, but I listen all the time because you never know when something like Greg Swick in Irwin was talking about his Santa Claus activations, and we talked about that for like a half an hour yesterday, and it was just fascinating, you know. And so
I hired him. Yeah, it cost me. He popping in cost me a lot of money. I hired him for Christmas Eve for the grandkids.
Yeah. So the whole thing is that but those are the kind of things, and I have to admit that I now sit in there with my camera off, just listening to the whole thing, because I never want to. The FOMO in after hours is way worse than office hours, like, because just these magical moments keep on just occurring. So anyway, that I don't think they would occur if we were recording it, just in case that's always the next question. Why don't we record the whole thing? I don't know if it would happen that way. And we're going to have more and more sessions that are more conversational with folks that can't go on office hours and after hours, like January 5th. Next question.
Ray Harwood, Avondale, Arizona, asks, mic sidetone in headsets or earplugs? Yes, no, or when?
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
When I'm on office hours, I'm not a big fan of it. But when I'm recording anything, especially when it comes to music, I like to have sidetone so I can hear how I sound. So if I make any mistakes, I can really stop and go back. And sometimes I'll actually even put it just in one ear, just to kind of give me the unevenness, so I keep on my voice as I go.
Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
All the time if I can get it, but the more my ears are restricted, meaning the more closed the headphones, the more necessary it becomes.
Yeah, go ahead, David.
I think with my baritone voice, it's just the opposite. The tighter the closure is to the thing, I hear myself more in my head, so I don't really use sidetone much.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
For me, since I've been in radio and commercials for such a long time, without it, I feel like I have less of the tools. But when I see somebody who's not a professional announcer go on headphones, they always try to sound too FM for me. So it's something you have to learn to moderate.
Yeah, go ahead, Alex.
For me, I've got such a simple setup, no mixer, nothing, just a in-ear monitor or Bumblebee plugged straight into my USB mic, and I don't particularly miss it as far as I can tell. I suppose I could do a slightly more FM voice if I wanted to, but I'm not prone to do that.
Yeah, I think the biggest, as Bill said, the biggest danger is oftentimes just that your voice will change because you're suddenly self-conscious to it. But I would highly recommend getting used to it, and you'll go through that. You'll go through that process in that area. Now I do it because I have this mic mute, and when it goes away, I know that I'm really off air, and when I hear myself, I know that I'm on air. So it's important for me to have it personally. Let's go to the next question.
Michael Andrus in Olathe, Kansas, in the U.S. says, where should some comments about the Office Hours 2.0 test streams be left?
I think that folks should go ahead and just talk about it in our event chat, and then if someone wants to send me notes or put them somewhere, I don't have any specific place to do it. Maybe RFI, you could throw them in there. Maybe Chad will think of somewhere we can put them for Office Hours 2.0. Yeah, let's set up somewhere, maybe right under RFI, Office Hours 2.0 feedback. So when people are watching the test feed, whether it's the colors or the multi-view or whatever, that we get feedback on it. That'd be great. Let's go to the next question.
Somebody named Alex Lindsay in Nevada, California says, has anyone played with the new TikTok Studio?
Just curious if anyone had seen it was part of that beta. So there's a beta that's floating around. They basically reskinned OBS, and they're gonna set it up for live streaming to TikTok. Finally, no, we don't have to use a phone. But there's a lot of legal wrangling going on with OBS now because they didn't follow the rules. so they are the rules of open source, and so we'll see what happens there. But right now, I'm just curious if anyone had saw a preview of it, but evidently not. So we'll move on.
Eddie Scott, Mission Viejo, California, comes in next, and he says, has anyone seen the Mokose C100-6-12 millimeter 12 megapixel HDMI camera? HDMI out, manual zoom, max 48 degrees field of view. Any thoughts about it?
I go, Rupert.
I've got one right here. I haven't got much to say about the image quality on it, but I would describe it as a interesting experiment during lockdown. I actually replaced the lens that came with it with this one. This is a 5-50, but it has USB 3 and HDMI output. You can't use them both at the same time. The menu system, the on-screen menu, is only accessible via the HDMI, so you have to set your preferences up kind of the way you want them, and then reboot it into USB mode if that's what you want. There's a firmware update available for it, which you have to load onto a memory card and boot it up using a kind of boot sequence. And other than that, yeah.
I go, Jeffrey.
Yeah, I have one too, of course. And Jeff Francis actually came on early on and used this, and we saw the differences between the USB and the HDMI. Keep in mind, with the USB, can only go up to 1080p as opposed to the full 4K 30. It's using the Sony Exmor R sensor, so that's a 12 megapixel sensor right there. For me, it's a great secondary camera. I'm not using it as any primary camera whatsoever. So if I would like point at the desktop or something like that, it'd be perfect. But you do need some distance on this lens because it really zooms in really quick.
Next question.
Danny Law in Malaysia is up next. Danny says, if your work is your passion, would you intentionally carve out downtime, or would downtime really matter in this regard?
Go ahead, David.
I think for just good mental health, some downtime, whether it's just reading or taking a walk or getting away from whatever it is you do, is good. It'll re-energize you and help reaffirm that what your passion is your passion.
Yeah. Go ahead, Rupert.
For me, the passion is sort of in the engineering and the problem solving and that kind of thing. And I find that, without downtime or without taking a break, the quality and efficiency of that work deteriorates. So I think if it's your passion, you really need to, and if it's your craft, you really need to look after it by taking those breaks and getting rest so that you can really, fulfill your passion.
Right. Jeffrey?
I like to let the river flow, so to speak, because there's days where it's just like you got to go from this point to this point nonstop. And there's going to be times where it's like, well, what am I going to do next? So you take those times, like yesterday, we went to see Spider-Man because I had some downtime. So, and this week is going to be kind of a little bit more relaxed to where I can bring some projects in, but I'm not going to let them rule what I do.
Go ahead, Bill.
For me, work is always putting things out. That's been my tradition since I was young. Downtime is when I take things in. I once went on a lecture tour to the East Coast. I was in Cleveland, Ohio, and the architecture of Cleveland, especially the bridges and stuff, for some reason it was inspiring. And I came back and I had a big surge of creative energy after that, just because I had put myself in a new environment. So I'm a great believer in both putting out, but also taking in. And that's what downtime's for.
Go ahead, Noah.
I think I have to force myself sometimes to just sit back and not overwork or overthink. And I think my wife is really good at that, right? So she's good about planning and getting together with family. And so having those experience kind of offset what I'm naturally inclined to do, which is work all the time. And I'm passionate about a lot of things. I have a lot of things going on, but sometimes you need to strip it all away to kind of like reset your mind and reset where you're pointed, essentially. And I think downtime is an important part of the process.
Yeah, I think of downtime a lot like I think about working out. You can't work out all the time and expect your muscles to build up again. You have an intense moment, and then you give yourself time, and you take lots and lots of little spacers. I think the best when I have a little bit of time. I know that I read a lot about Nikola Tesla, and he talked about it a lot, like, because don't just jump into things, ponder them for a while and think about them. And, he was pretty productive. But I think that a lot of times we get caught up in, I have to work X number of hours, or I have to be that, and that the work is do. And a lot of times it's very hard for us to really create a well-guided path when we're filling up our time. And I would say that also includes social media and games. That's not downtime. Like, that's still working your mind. And so downtime is really like not doing anything and letting your brain just kind of settle in to what it's doing. And I think that's part of the problem people have now is one of the reasons they're escalating quickly is because they think that hanging out on social media or surfing the web is a downtime, and it's not. It's not giving their brain a breath. It's just doing the same thing, just somewhere else. And so and the brain will want to do that, and you really have to, in my opinion, you have to fight the urge. Next question.
Next one appears to be for me. It says, Bill appears to have moved to a new setup. Yes, I have. It looks great. What prompted the change?
Go ahead, Bill.
Well, so the answer is two things. Number one, Office Hours 2.0. I realized we were going to be doing something different. I had heard it was going to be an HDR, so I thought, what should I change in order to prepare for that? The other thing is that I have had some of the things, the little tchotchkes that are up there, in cabinets for a long time. Some of them are kind of old favorites. They have meaning to me. So the fact that I was able to bring them out and put them on display, I thought would be a good conversation starter for when I'm in Zoom chats with clients and things like that.
That's great. Next question.
Next one comes from Stefan Lindholm in Albo, Finland, or Abo, Finland. I'm not Abo. Okay. Which money is no object microphone? Audio interface combination would you choose for office hours?
Go ahead, John.
Stefan, my kind of man. Money, no object. You'd probably have multiple, microphones and pull a Paul on that, because originally I bought a Neumann 103 and my room does not work well for that microphone, so I had to switch. But my favorite mic is the Telefunken U47, just because Zappa made it famous. And then I'd go with the Red system. It's got Dante built into it.
Yeah, go ahead, David.
This isn't really a money no option choice, but I love my Heil PR40 into my Flow 8. If you're only dealing with a couple of inputs, it's seamless, flawless, perfect.
Go ahead, Bill.
Well, if money is no object, I'd probably go for a Sony 800, but I don't really think any of those really top-end microphones are going to be noticeable through the chains that we're all using. I mean, if you're recording 48 or 96 kilohertz on highly tuned tape decks and things like that, or digital systems, yeah, there's a lot of brilliant overtones and things like that. I'm not sure that they're going to make it through this USB chain that everybody's listening to now. So I think the microphones we talk about in office hours are actually some of the best in terms of getting the job done.
I have to find I was trying to come up with it while we were answering. There's a guy that I met in IBC that hand builds these incredible microphones. And as soon as I talked into it, I was like, I need to have this microphone. And I said, how much is this? It's $6,500. I was like, okay, I don't need to have this microphone. I'll try to find the name for it. I'll ping some folks and see if I can't find it for you. And I'll later in the show, I'll probably go, this is the microphone. I'm going to ask some friends. But U87 is pretty nice for, if you're not worried about price. I would, when he says money has no object, I would highly recommend the 8 series of the sound devices, since we're not trying to save any money, mostly because it sits on, by having a mixer that's on Dante with those preamps and the ability to add noise assist, you get an incredible amount of power. I know it's completely overkill that I have a Scorpio that I'm using right now for this. And so it's really convenient to have that as far as the interface goes, and it's just a USB interface into the computer. So, but then you also have Dante, so you can pipe Dante into the system. So I would take a look at that if you're not worried about how much it costs. The other thing to remember is that your room is as important as your mic. So the entire environment that you're in, as someone else talked about the fact that I use a Heil. I don't use my 102 because it picks up too much of my room. Like, it picks up everything that I'm doing around me. And so I moved away from it. So sometimes it's not just the mic. The other one, by the way, is the one that I've seen at some pretty high-end studios, radio studios, like probably the biggest radio station in the world, is the SV33, the Earthworks SV33 it sounds really nice. And it's not quite as expensive as the U87. Go ahead, Bill.
Well, I was also going to say, remember, the content you're feeding into the microphone is the key, because a brilliant recording of a beginner violin player is just as annoying. In fact, it may be 10 times more annoying. So if you can't get your content production up, the mic doesn't really matter.
Next question.
Laura Seal in Greensboro, North Carolina says, what pan tilt zoom under $3,000 could I install in a church and control remotely? And how do I incorporate sound from their Mackie board into the live stream?
Go ahead, Noah.
So I would recommend a new one from Canon. It's going to be the CRN300. Comes just at your price point that you're talking about. This can be controlled remotely, and as far as audio goes, you'll see on the back there is an 1/8 inch in, so you can basically take an aux out from that Mackie board and go directly into the PTZ and then stream out from there. It also has controllers that you can use with it to control it remotely, and I'm sure through the web there are ways to control that PTZ as well. I just haven't done that yet.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
PTZ Optics has a lot of PTZ cameras that will go way below the 3,000. In fact, you could actually probably buy 2 of them and still hit that 3,000 mark. Some of them go 20x, some of them will go 30x, SDI, HDMI, or over, excuse me, IP, NDI type stuff. With that said, Amazon's starting to see a lot of new entries into the PTZ market that even dropped below $1,000. It's the question of whether you're going to get support, because it's probably going to be the same type of processor lens inside there. But what type of interface will it have, and how easy will it be to control?
Yeah, this is a little over that price point, but I think it's the 500, the N500 is the one I'm probably the most interested in. It's about $5,000, and it's got a 1-inch chip in it, and it looks. I mean, the test footage I've seen from it looks amazing, and I just haven't had I haven't had the opportunity to test it yet. Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, definitely. It's actually listed so you can select either the smaller sensor or the larger 1-inch sensor. And for the price point, like you're saying, Alex, that's the cheapest 1-inch that we've seen. Plus, it's Canon, which is obviously a solid brand on top of that. So,
yeah, I think that Canon really is figured out that they need to get into this market in a big way, and I think it seems like they're really thinking different, so to speak, as far as not trying to hold folks into the same chip sizes that we had before. I just feel like there's a huge jump with 1-inch and above from the smaller chips. Next question.
Jason Bache here on the panel from Albuquerque, New Mexico says, what size foam core should I use to substitute a teleprompter for a live script read? My client is not accustomed to being on camera, so I expect to rehearse. I'm after a nice mix of not too much switching and not too little.
Go ahead, Don.
Jason, do you know the distance between you and the subject?
It'll be a 24 to 70 shot, sitting at a desk. So your standard, kind of presidential address type deal.
Yeah. What I've noticed specifically with the teleprompters that I've used is the person reading, obviously their eyesight has something that you got to keep in mind as well. But yeah, for foam core, I've usually used a 2x3 foot piece, but obviously I prefer the teleprompter when possible. But yeah, I think 2x3.
I don't want to lug it out there. He's a dentist with uncorrected vision, so I think he'll be okay.
Okay.
The hardest part that we found is that where foam core works, you're talking about putting up their notes, to the side. Is that?
Yeah, that's exactly it.
So the problem really is that I saw this with the Elton John special or whatever that they did, or he was part of it, that he was the host of it, and he was looking off to the side. Now I think they just used the screen as a teleprompter, but the point is that the issue is that where foam core works is when you have a live audience and you have the impression that someone's looking off camera for a reason. When they're by themselves and they're looking off frame, it looks inauthentic. It looks off-putting. So that's the thing that I'd be really careful about, is that if we don't have an idea as an audience in the head, if we don't have it in our head that he's talking to other people, that way you get away with foam core all the time. But foam core as a direct address is pretty. I don't think he's going to have a great experience, or the viewer is not going to have a great experience. And we get back into that. It's
going to wreck my eye line.
It's going to really wreck your eye line. Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Bill, real quick.
Real quick, I just wanted to say, Jason, if you're having trouble with the size of the foam core, remember that if you score a foam core down the center with a razor blade and crack it, and then take some white gaffer's tape and put it on the inside of the crack, you can make all foam core half the size and it still works perfectly.
Now he's thinking. Yeah.
Go ahead, Alex.
I'm wondering if you do have to have a bad eye line, would it be a good idea to have the foam core over there? So it looks like I'm thinking of something and I'm just trying to remember something, then over here or down here. So I'm going.
If it's just notes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That'd be an interesting model. I never thought of that. The best thing to do is look straight in the camera. Next question.
Noah Sargent, Fullerton, California, is back with, would stereoscopic video work through a teleprompter?
Go, Jason.
The answer is absolutely, as long as the teleprompter is big enough to allow for the intra-axial distance, which is the distance between the two lenses.
Well, interaxial and also field of view. So the field, depending on, usually when you're doing 180, usually when you're doing stereo, you tend to be doing something with a wider field of view, because you want people to be kind of, in the new stereo, you tend to want people to be able to look around. If you're doing old stereo where it doesn't really matter, you just have to have that field of view. The two cameras are going to be at interaxial distance. And then in addition to that, they have to have the room for whatever because again, when you do stereo, you often do a wider field of view, but if you don't, it totally should work. We actually use beam splitters to get that interaxial view. So we use so that you have one camera going through and one camera going up. That way we can have them overlap so that a large film camera can put the eyes at interaxial properly. Go ahead, Noah.
I love that. I had that idea and I just never executed on it. So that's cool that it worked for you. I guess
it did work for me. Those are like $300,000. When we were doing stereo, it wasn't. When we were doing a lot of stereo 10 years ago, that was the big rig. Was these huge F23s or whatever that were going through a beam splitter.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I guess I didn't think of how I worded this question well. I love the thought of like shooting through the prompter, like through the glass as a stereoscopic image. I guess my question was more of like, could you have the monitor itself be stereoscopic, like 3D, but still bounce off of the teleprompter lens, glass, excuse me?
You'd have a very hard time with that because that's a specific kind of surface that's doing that. I mean, theoretically, if the person was wearing glasses, you could do it, but the ones that are glass free, the surface of the monitor is really important. If the ones that would work that way would be polarized and and that'd be very hard. But we would say that there's no reason to do that because the person on the front end doesn't matter, but maybe they do. So, but yeah. Next question.
Brad in North Fort Myers, Florida, says, I think Alex has mentioned this before, but the external audience is growing, correct?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we're definitely growing every week, and without a lot of effort. We're going to put, as we finish 2.0, we'll probably turn the gas on a little bit. Next question.
Rupert McRae here in the panel, Dallas, Texas. Can we have thoughts from the panel on belt pack transmitter battery runtime? Good, bad, indifferent, what to expect, and when to replace?
Go ahead, Noah.
I guess, what kind of belt pack are you talking about? Like FM or transmitter for lavs?
For a wireless mic, yeah, lav or a headset, just to see how long, where we should go with quality versus battery runtime.
I see. Yeah. For my setup, I use a BLX, and I believe they're like 14 to 16 hours. So as long as I put a fresh pack in the beginning of the day, they tend to be solid. Most shoot days tend to last like less than 8 hours. So I would say like 10 to 12 hours probably ideal. And then as far as like the quality goes, I haven't really seen too many lavs with like 32-bit float. So that would be an interesting thing to move into like the higher end stuff, because obviously there's a few lavs out there that do that, but not many.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So I use the Sony system because I have a Sony camera, and with the shoe I can actually put it right through into the camera rather than wires. So it's a dual lav system. This is what I use. I use it with rechargeable batteries because on the side I do have a USB charging option on it, and I could literally even take one of those charging packs and put it in the other pocket and run a cord from one to the other to keep this as charged as possible. And I've gone to shows where I've used this all day without a problem. As long as you're muting it, not bringing sound through it, it's going to work a lot less than it does if you have it active the whole time.
Go ahead, Jason.
I think that Shure's tend to last a little bit longer. I'm sorry, Sennheisers tend to last longer than Shure's. So like my in-ear monitors tend to, I don't know, I would say maybe 8 hours or so. They are not worth the battery pack. It's too expensive. I tend to use Eneloop nickel metal hydride, and yeah, pretty much all day.
Go ahead, Bill, real quick.
I never let my batteries go more than 4 or 5 hours, even though they probably do double that in more. And the reason is you're always at that last shot of the day or trying to get something in when the batteries are getting really old, and I don't want that. So I change them religiously at the meal breaks 4 hours in.
Next question.
Tobias Moss in Minneapolis up next. He said, doing an outdoor nighttime event in midwinter Minneapolis. Ooh. Easily could be negative temps. Could I anticipate problems with portable amps, mics, or pavotubes? What other lights would you recommend to beautify a small park?
A lot of those, I mean, definitely look at the specs that they put in there. A lot of devices will talk about their operational temperatures. And so you want to kind of think about that. The other thing is the biggest problem you're going to have I see that maybe you're not using cameras, but lenses are the biggest thing that you struggle with when dealing with cold, because you're coming from a warm area to cold or a cold area to warm, and they fog up or they freeze. And then go ahead, Bill.
Well, I was just going to say also, you said pavotubes, so lights, batteries are a big problem when it gets that cold. So make sure you're on shore power wherever possible, or bring 3 times the number of batteries you could possibly imagine going through.
Yeah, a lot of people insulate their batteries to try to keep them a little warmer because they will discharge up to 4 times faster when they're cold, and when it gets colder, even faster than that. Next question.
Morgan Price from Victoria, British Columbia in Canada. Whoops, I'm sorry, I hit the wrong thing. That's not me answering. Thinking of finally getting a Blackmagic Design 6K Pro camera for Zoom office hours like use. What accessories should I also order? Not lenses, but connecting audio and so forth. I would use this with an ATEM Mini Extreme ISO.
Go ahead, Jason.
First, congratulations. And I really don't buy a camera without getting a cage. They are very useful. They are very necessary. Also, the optical viewfinder is a great thing if you actually are going to be behind it. If it's for office hours only, then probably not. The second one that I find to be really, really handy is get a pair of their the Blackmagic Mini XLRs, so you can go, line level in directly to the camera.
Yeah, definitely the line level in T5 drive is great. The new small rig Pro rig, the cage that Jason was talking about, has a little slot that's built for the T5 drive
and
right
the
underneath
wrench.
it. I know, yeah. So it just slides right in. So you used to have to. The older rigs had a kind of an external T5 connection, but that's a really good one. And that's the number one thing that I would say. Also, just because I've had issues with it recently, again, monoprice HDMI cables don't always carry the control signal back correctly to it. Doesn't seem to be a problem with the long ones, but for some reason the 10 to 20 foot ones, we've had a lot of trouble with controlling the camera going through those HDMI cable returns. Go ahead, Bill.
Well, I think everybody covered what I was going to say, so let's move on.
Let's go, Noah.
Does it come with a power supply?
It does. Yes.
Okay. Great.
One cool little thing that I have. Hold on, let me see if I might be able to grab it here. I have 2 of these. These are great little emergencies. So this is a D-tap to this is a D-tap in to the camera. Okay, so if you have a any kind of regular professional type battery, you can make it work. The other one is USB-C to the camera. So these 2 I keep in my pack when I go out, and those are kind of my worst case scenarios to power up the camera, and I haven't had any trouble with it. Go ahead, Jason.
One last thought on that. I believe DVE Store, unless they've already sold it, still has like 1 or 2 used ones. I would not normally buy a used camera, but I think DVE Store is one of the few places where I trust.
Next question.
Next one comes from Douglas Carmichael, and he says, Kings of Leon include concert tickets for life, 4 front row seats, plus a VIP experience, including luxury transport and backstage access with their NFT, their non-fungible tokens, in the digital first era. Wouldn't it make more sense to build it around streams, not shows?
Go ahead, David.
I don't think so. I think there's something experiencing a concert in person, especially with that kind of access. There's a visceral thing of being there and being part of that moment that I don't think you can replicate with streams yet.
Anyway, so I do a lot of streams. So anyway, so I think that I think David's right. I think they're trying to tie that back into a physical experience, so that people have. I think people are still getting used to the idea that something that is in the virtual world is real. And so having something, if you're going to buy into something, giving someone something that's real, at least I think this is a kind of that hybrid event type thing. So anyway, so we just put out a poll to see. It's very even. Put out a poll as to whether you want us to talk more about NFTs and blockchain or not. So we'll see how that goes. So the poll's up right now. We'll close it in about a minute. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Todd Rains in Allen, Texas, and he says, has anybody used VBAN from VB Audio? It appears to be a network push-to-top type comms option, and he's got a link there.
I have never I have not heard of VBAN. We're going to have to check it out. Yeah, I think that's Rupert.
I've heard it talked about recently in after hours, so maybe drop in there and ask around.
Yeah, we should. But yeah, it's interesting. Maybe if someone, we'll reach out to him and see if we can have him come in. It's an interesting tech. Maybe we probably should cover it. Next question.
Comes from Chris in Wisconsin. Chris says, what's a good mic setup for very much a non-technical Zoom user who needs to improve their audio but favors low cost?
I go with Jeffrey.
The one thing I would suggest is if you can find a dynamic mic over a cardioid mic, then go and get it. IK Multimedia has the iRig Mic HD, which is one of those. You put it on a stand, you get a simple $10 shock mount to it, and even some of the shock mounts also have pop filters on them, and then you can get that as close to your mouth as possible, and it'll work really well. And that's, once again, on the USB side. If you want XLR, an SM58 will work just as well.
Yeah, go ahead, David.
I just want to add that whatever mic you get, teaching people how to use it well, how to speak properly, where mic placement is equally as important as the technology itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And the one that I've just got, I put out a tweet that got an enormous amount of attention, more than I expected. It was more of a quip than anything else, and suddenly a lot of people seem to like it. But I really leaned into the MV7 because it is a USB. It's an easy USB mic. You just plug it in and it works. It sounds great. And it means that if you grow and go, oh, I really wish this was part of something larger, it still has an XLR. So it allows, that's why I've started to recommend it to everyone, is just that they can go to USB. They don't need to have an interface. They can just start working. But as soon as they want to have something more complete, they can add it, and they're not buying a new mic to make that jump. And it sounds really good. Next question.
Next one comes from Morgan Price in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada. And he says, have people used the Neumann BCM 705 dynamic microphone for spoken word? Why do we not see this more on office hours? Is it cost benefit, or does it not meet the Ruthless review cutoff?
Go ahead, John.
This is a very good sounding mic. My friend has this mic. It sounds equivalent to Chris's 102 as far as sound quality goes. The weird kind of thing about this is it's designed to hang overhead, and it kind of looks funny in a frame. You see it in radio, but for video, it's going to be hanging down over the top of your head, which is a little weird.
Yeah, a lot of us have kind of moved to underslung, and so it's not really a mic. You could probably find a way to set it up as an underslung mic, but it's not the way it's usually used. Next question.
Next question comes from David Brady here on the panel in New York City. Are there any preferred background set colors for the HDR experience, which work and which are not safe?
Oh, white's a little harsh. I just looked down at the Neumann picture that John posted, and my eyes were like, ouch. so white is hard. But I would say that reds look nice as long as they don't peak. But I think that those really, really high luminance is something that jumps out a little bit. I haven't seen any colors that really are no-goes. Red doesn't compress well, so it oftentimes will look a little bit beat up. But like, for instance, David's background looks fine. I think that the sign actually looks pretty cool in HDR. So, but it is peaking just a little bit. So that's the challenge, is really any pure color, that color itself has a high probability of peaking, as it goes through. So that's the thing you have to kind of watch for. But big white backgrounds are probably the thing that's the hardest thing to look at, because HDR is bright enough that it literally makes your iris close. As when you see a bright screen, especially a full size screen, and you throw up a white image, your iris, it's so bright that your iris will literally close down, and that means the next thing that comes after it is going to look darker than it did before, because your irises now have to open up slowly again. So you have to be very careful with bright colors or really, really bright scenes. If you're going to go bright to dark to bright to dark, the monitors, if they're 1,000 nits or 1,500 nits or 2,000 nits, are literally going to cause changes in your eyes, which SDR didn't do, and so, or brighter monitors didn't do. And so those are some of the idiosyncrasies that we found with building HDR content, is that you have to be very careful of scene-to-scene transitions. Next question.
Rupert McRae in Dallas, Texas has some research for us this morning. He says, according to the research firms Frost and Sullivan, the number of virtual hybrid events will grow by more than 10 times to 52% of all events by 2025. Does the panel think this is a reasonable estimate?
Go ahead, Noah.
I think obviously there's a bunch of us that have already embraced the virtual event kind of system, right? And so I think there's going to be a small pullback towards in-person events, and then people are going to realize that this is a lot more work. It's a lot more time and money and cost. And so I think there's going to be that swing back towards virtual. Yes, hybrids there. It's kind of the in-between stage, but I think eventually we'll obviously be more virtual heavy.
Go ahead, Alex.
Strangely enough, it depends on what you mean by how much they'll grow 10 times. I think that we will go back to live events, but the thing is there'll be just many more events. If we consider us having meetings with the people in different countries as part of work, that'll blend into being events. So it's more like in the direction of travel, I think. So yeah.
Yeah, we partner that we've worked with in the past did some math over the COVID. I think I might have mentioned it over maybe last week, but they looked at the attendance that they had over the last year, and they had gone back to physical events in the fall. The attendance for the online was 20x, not 200% or 400%, 20 times bigger. And the margins, by the way, were higher. So that's what that portends to is it's not that we're going to go away from physical events, but I think that the large events don't pencil out. The 15,000 or above, or 10,000 or above, or really probably 1,000 or above, are not going to pencil out for most companies as they start doing the math. That the hard math is when you do a physical event, you are cutting out 99.9999% of the world. Like that's what a physical event does. And if you do a hybrid, you just make their experience worse. So the thing is that by not catering to your fully addressable market, or a much more addressable market, even if in person is more effective for the people who showed up, it's less efficient for the organization putting it on, because if 99.9% of your market is not being addressed, then you could be 100th as efficient as the in-person. And I would argue that online is probably 50% as efficient or 30% as efficient, not 1%, and you'd still get a better ROI. So that's the math, that the hard math that's facing physical events is that they're just they're not really addressing their full market. Next question.
Next one comes from Rich Clemens in West Virginia. He says, when you move from SDR to HDR cameras as a video source, does that typically increase the sync needed for the audio track?
Go ahead, Jason.
No, it absolutely should not.
Yeah, the processors that we're using FSHDRs, and the processors there lose the same amount we lose about a frame, and we lose that no matter what. So it doesn't matter what you do in the system, because that's the advantage of using hardware, is it's not taking more and suddenly taking more time. It just has what it has, and everything goes through it at a certain pace. Next question.
Alex Forney-Goldner here on the panel and in London in the UK says, resources for learning how to sell graphics and templates via the Mac App Store with the option to add and sell content via the app purchases. Discuss.
I really think that there should be, a store inside of the apps, like not the Mac App Store, but the apps themselves should have their own stores, and I think that if you're, for instance, a partner of Apple or whatever, that your thing should show up in the menu grayed out, like a known partner that, is there. And then otherwise you could go other and go search for other things that might be there. I think all apps are leaving a lot. All companies that don't do that are leaving a lot on the table, like they're, I think because they could be taking, 30% or 15% or whatever of all those purchases of the stuff that's going through their application. And you can even let people continue to do it any way they want. But the reality is the convenience of being able to just grab it, and use it, and possibly piggyback on some kind of subscription service seems like it would make the most sense. So I think that right now the integration of the plugins with Motion and Final Cut at least are a little painful. But I think that I'm always surprised. We've been thinking about that for over a decade. We talked about it for other apps that we worked on, and our apps didn't come out in the end. But I'm always surprised that other companies haven't started to really get into the fact that they are building an ecosystem, and they should be making it easier for the users to access that content. Adobe's probably doing it better than everybody else. With the Substance, you can go out and buy stuff. You can subscribe to stuff and get lots and lots of surfaces. They have a whole stock area. So probably Adobe's probably doing it better than anyone else at the moment, but still it's pretty rough, because they're not really getting into the plugins, that much, for that process. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael has one actually for me. He said, Bill, you mentioned that fly packs in a ballroom are gone forever. And he has a link to a post that I did, I guess about a year and a half ago or a year ago in Creative Cow forums. What is the future for the traditional equipment rental with text model in our new era?
Go ahead, Bill.
So here's the context in which I'm doing that. I've been a part of that community for a long time, and I used to argue kind of vociferously that things were going to change. When COVID hit and we had to do things new, it triggered for me two things. Number one, remembering all the years I traveled with as part of big fly packs behind the proscenium on stage, there would be 7, 8, 10 people with all sorts of computers on tables to run a show. And then probably about 7 or 8 years ago, I went to one for a consulting firm, one of the big ones that the name will probably know, and all that was gone from backstage, and there were 4 laptops in the front, and they were running the entire show off of that. And that was transformative for me. It said, the old way is going away, the new way is coming in, and it's going to be lighter, digital, and all computer driven. I think we're still seeing that. I'm not trying to say that no one will ever do fly pack style shows, and there are certain things where that equipment is still important, but I think it's fading. And the digitization of this and the cloudification of this is going to change this forever. And I think that's one of the things we're trying to help people deal with here on Office Hours.
Go ahead, Noah.
I've been to about 20 different cities in the last 2 months with 19 Pelican cases, talking exactly what Bill's saying. Like, it still happens, but we're trying to slim down. We went from 19 and we scaled down to 14, but virtual's the way to go. Team virtual all the way.
I think that the other question that we've had with some of our partners is, as they start to, because the virtual events weren't working really well, they started leaning into this flipping the classroom, which is that they're posting videos about their products and then doing Q&As, and that started to become more popular. But as they start to do that, they start realizing that they don't know when they go back to physical events, whether they're going to do any plenary sessions, that aren't discussions. Like they're discussions, they're Q&A, but the idea of someone standing up on a podium presenting a slide deck is starting to become, they're starting to realize that was a horrible idea when it started. It was necessary when it started because that's how you got information out and that's how you presented it. But now that we have video capabilities, do we really need to do that anymore? Or should we just give people that content and then have them actually come in for a discussion, which actually makes it a bigger reason to go to the event, is because you're actually going to be interactive. You're not going to, events have forever protected all their content. Like that's why people came, which was not the case. Next question.
Lois Richter in Davis, California, here on the panel often says, Alex mentioned putting a speaker on a speaker back to behind a speaker to reduce noise instead of in-ear monitors. What would you use and how would you attach it?
We often use these little, there's some little JBLs that are really, really small, and I can't think of the name of them right now. And there's a bunch of they're very dense, very small speakers that we tend to set behind it, but they don't have to be anything specific because they're not putting out a lot of power. They are, one thing that we do tend to do is they tend to be powered speakers. So they're plugged in or they have their own battery if they're like a little speaker system. What we don't want to do is try to run speaker wires out to them. So we want to have an XLR that goes to them. So they have to be able to take an XLR or in some cases an 1/8" jack if they're a really little speaker. But they have to be self-powered and they have to be able to take a balanced audio input typically for us to use it. And then that goes back to our mixer. It has to be in the same mixer because we're using Dugan Auto Mix to go back and forth between the speaker and the microphone. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, we use Fostex makes one similar to what you
Fostex,
described.
yeah.
It's heavy as heck.
That's the one. I can't think of the name of I can't.
I'll get the model number. I have one at the Sunday place.
I might even have one. I think I have one almost in reach. So anyway, the Fostex one. I was saying JBL, but Fostex is the one that I was thinking of. Go ahead, Noah.
So how do you do like a mix minus, or how do you send out, and how you said it balances between the two?
Yes, we use Dugan Auto Mix to push back and forth. So they're both in the same chain. Now it is still a mix minus of themselves, but what we're really trying to do is make sure that the mic doesn't hear the speaker and the speaker doesn't hear the mic. Like that's mostly the mic doesn't hear the speaker. So what we want to do is when the far end is talking, when the speaker is getting audio, it's pushing the mic down. So that's why if you have those two channels there, when the person starts talking, it pushes, the Dugan Auto Mix allows you to push then the mic down. or the speaker down. So it's pushing both directions, because that's how a Dugan works, is that it works both ways. It doesn't work if everyone's trying to talk over each other, but what it does do is, in a relatively organized conversation, it keeps everything clean. And we do the same thing in a room with lots of people. So if you have a speakers in a room, like on a stage talking to someone remote, we're doing a Dugan auto mix on the remote and a Dugan auto mix in the room to do exactly the same thing. And it does take tuning. And that tuning is Brian Maddox. So like, I think that of all the ones that I've done, Brian's already done 99% of them. And so that's kind of how that works. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, it's the Fostex 6301 NX for it. I'll put it in Mukana.
Yeah, absolutely. Jeffrey.
And that's another advantage of a dynamic microphone, is you could put a speaker on the other side of that, more on the floor, and use it. That's what they do with bands all the time. I have the little Anchor speakers that are actually down in the basement that I use for stuff every now and then. They work really well.
Next question.
Lois Richter's right back from Davis, California. Would turning the desk so it's off angle to the square room make the sound better?
Go, Rupert.
I think in general, what you certainly want to avoid is talking at 90 degrees to a big flat wall. That's kind of worst case scenario. At an angle would help. I didn't want to kind of dedicate the square footage to that, so I actually just turn to an angle and talk. I'm talking into the kind of corner of my desk. My desk sits this way, and then I pull my desk out away from the wall a little bit, put shelves with a whole bunch of kind of clutter on that side and shelves on this side, and I hung a moving blanket below the shelves on this side. So I'm trying to just work with what I've got.
Good, Bill.
Yes, better, yes. But will that solve the problem that you're trying to solve, which might be too much echo or reverb or too dead or too live? And, it will contribute, but really it's a holistic problem if you want to try to make your room sound as good as it can. And that is absorption, killing reflections, and these little tricks like making sure the geometry isn't fighting you, but they all have to go together.
It does. It also does another advantage, which is that it tends to give you nice vanishing points behind you as well. So having a flat wall also doesn't look good on camera. So it's oftentimes better. I mean, you can if you have lots of stuff in there in geometry, but if you don't have a lot behind you, having some vanishing points is nice as well. Next question.
Lois Richter is right back again with setting up a new room for a studio. The desk is clattery sounding. Would putting down a blanket first make the sound better? Go ahead, Jeffrey.
I would highly advise not to put down a blanket because of the static electricity that a blanket could actually create. With that said, an anti-static mat is relatively inexpensive and works really well. You can also use a tablecloth that has a coating on top. That way, you're not when you're touching things, you're not getting shocks, especially during the winter times where it gets really dry.
Good, Rupert.
So what I tend to do is use this stuff. It's kind of the anti-slip material you can put in drawers and things. I lay that down under strategic kind of things, like under my mouse pad, under anything else that might make a noise or might slip or might kind of rattle or fall over. It gives you a bit of cushioning, and really I use this actually more for the anti-slip properties, that it kind of stops things flying. Yeah,
I use a cutting board or the cutting mat, which is like 36 by 24 or something like that on my desk, and it's kind of a nice mat. I use it because it also has a grid which I can measure my cables when I'm cutting them. so it's got a couple different uses to it. Next question.
Guy Cochran in Seattle, often on the panel here, says, "What's new in the Zoom update?"
Go ahead, Rupert. And by the way, for folks, before Rupert gets started, we're going to go a little over. We don't have as many people for the Ruthless review, and we don't have a ton of questions for it. We've got a couple questions here, so we're just going to finish these up. Go ahead, Rupert.
So the update came out today. So if you're being prompted for the update, be sure and get it. It's actually quite a big one. A few features in there. I was going to bring up a slide, but I didn't get that. There's able to edit breakout rooms while they're in use. That's a big update. You're able to now say, if you have a custom grid order in your meeting, you're able to save that feature. Save that order for the next occurrence of that meeting. You can schedule meetings with focus mode. There's actually quite a few options, really. It's probably be quite advisable to update and check the release notes.
Go ahead. Yep, absolutely. Next question.
Chris in Wisconsin is back in. Has anyone built a setup at home for multiple people to participate in a family Zoom that's better than an iPad alone. Perhaps a purpose-built Omni mic and strategically placed speakers with a computer video to a TV.
Go ahead, David.
If you're hooking it up to a TV, the Facebook Portal TV devices, tiny little set-top thing. We got one for the house of worship. We're using it in this big, gigantic hall, and it does a surprisingly good job tracking people, and audio's pretty solid. $150, I think. Check it out.
Go ahead, Noah.
That's really cool. Yeah, I was fighting the urge to throw a bunch of gear at the situation I'm in. But once a week, I have a small group from my church get together at my house, and we do something very simple. We just set a laptop right next to the TV, use the TV as a video interface and webcam off the laptop. Then we also use an H5 from Zoom, which has an XY microphone, and that is good enough to kind of capture the 6 to 8 people that are sitting on the couch talking.
Go ahead, Rupert.
Yeah, so I happen to have PCs connected to all of the TVs anyway, so I go that route. I put a Brio or something like that on top of the the big screen in the living room, whatever. If we got a group of people on the couch, then I try and put it like a 15-foot cord out, and get that microphone as close to the people as you can.
Next question.
Todd Rains up next from Allen, Texas. Are there any suggestions for desks or table mounts for a camera that allows for a great range of motion?
Go ahead, David.
I just recently got this Ulanzi, which I really like. It's got 3 articulating arms. Sorry, it's not a very good view. And I can move it around. The ball head is 360-degree ball head. And it just clamps right to my desk. It's really very convenient.
And then go ahead, John.
I've got an auto pull on mine, and then I've got a truss across it. But any connection to the camera, my camera's connected with the Manfrotto super clamp. Now there's 2 super clamps. There's one that's got a lever on it. That's really tough to set. The variable friction one, I think, is easier to control and move around than the lever one.
And I'll always remind you that attaching mics to you have to have a really solid desk to attach a camera, not mic, but a camera to the desk. Before, you're going to get vibration 95% of the time. Now, these 2 examples are probably with folks that have really solid desks, but you just want to be really clear that your desk, 95% chance you're going to get a vibration when you start hitting it. Next question.
Next one comes from David Paskin here in the panel from Miami, Florida. When facilitating an online event, do you prefer live talent or pre-recorded?
Go ahead, Rupert.
I mean, I can say that when I attend an event, I prefer to see live talent. I think there are some edge cases that can pull off pre-records. I mean, Apple do a good job of putting together something and then rolling it out live. I think if you're dealing with a kind of premiere type situation, then if you can do a good job at that. But on the whole, I like to see live content. I especially don't like seeing content that is recorded, but they'd like me to believe it's live. They're just lying to me, and I don't like that.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Especially with anybody that is not experienced in front of the camera, I like to have pre-recorded content, because all the time, or a lot of the time, they'll sit there and they'll start going and let's go, wait, can we go back a second? Can we start that over? And you don't want to have that happen during a live event, because they just don't understand how things are working. The one thing I do recommend to all my clients is we do a pre-record. And we do a live if they want to do a live. That way, if there's any problems, we can switch to the pre-record. Plus, they've practiced what they're going to say.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I think my preference is, as a watcher, as a participant, I'd rather see somebody do it live and make mistakes, because I think it's more genuine. I know that from the standpoint of our clients, they always feel like they want to do it pre-recorded, safety reasons. But we're starting to see a little bit more of a tip toward people saying, no, let's just do it live.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't want to see presentations in any way, shape, or form. like I don't need that. The only time I think that when Apple does it, they put in a lot of money. So when you look at, Apple's doing it, well, that's an enormous investment that they've made into that. I mean, I've looked at their shows. I think that those shows are somewhere north of $10 million an activate, per show. for them to do that. I mean, it's an enormous amount of effort to put those together. If you can't put that kind of money into it, I think that you can get through a lot of things by having a conversation with your audience. Like you don't need the same budget when they're engaged in the conversation. So I think that, I mean, I work with a lot of clients as well that really want to do records. They pre-record. I that's been most of my business over the last year and a half or whatever. So, but what I will say is that there is an immediacy to the live, especially when it's interacting with the audience, that basically supersedes everything else. The audience feeling like and I think that that's going to become more as we see more Twitch people, like that age group becomes a larger and larger group. People are not going to be used to being passive, and especially if you have low density content, which is your PowerPoint is, or your keynote is low density content. You got to move through that really, really fast, or don't do it. Next question.
Next one comes from Douglas Carmichael. Douglas says, Charles mentioned visual effects VFX artists moving up to art director, producer, and supervisor roles. What tools would be used to manage distributed or virtual teams in a production environment and facilitate collaboration? I know Zoom can be laggy with 3D graphics.
F-Track. It's a big one. That's the big one. As far as like managing teams of what they're doing and how they're doing it. Obviously, people use Slack and Discord to talk, but when you're talking about VFX management, F-Track is kind of the big one in town. I'm on another forum that was a long discussion about it. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael, the marketing for Jurassic Park in Concert mentions the movie being projected, quote, in HD. Wouldn't there be a lot of lost detail in presumably 1080p versus 4K HDR? Why would 1080p be the optimum resolution for this type of event?
Go ahead, Alex.
It's likely that the source resolution of the actual film is not better than 1080p in terms of actual resolution. In terms of dynamic range, 1080p HDR would be the best thing, really, because then you get the biggest effect. I don't know what Jurassic Park in Concert is. If it's a live event which actually projects the movie, then nobody's going to be close enough to the screen to be able to see the movie because they're in their environment, their whole concert being played. But in general, as most people know, quite a lot of VFX, even in modern big VFX movies, are still done in HD and then scaled up to 4K. So that's maybe the answer.
Yeah, I think it's more about the experience of the thing than the actual piece of resolution. And I will say that not everything. A lot of times back in the 90s, we were cutting a lot of corners. So if you look at a full resolution, like if you watch episode 1, which I worked on, stuff doesn't look as sharp as it could have, in that area. The one that I really found to hit me hard is I went to see the re-release of the Matrix, the 20th anniversary at Dolby, and they upgraded it to 4K. All the film shots looked great, but all the effect shots obviously were rendered at 1080p or less, and those were not as sharp. Next question.
Stefan Fischer in Würzburg, Germany says, what's the reason for frame rates like 2397 frames per second comparing 24 frames per second and so forth?
Go ahead, Bill.
Okay, I'm going to try to do this quietly, and I'm really going to send you on a lookup thing. So the reality is that when video first started and black and white was the thing, it was some years before they added color. When they added color to it, they had to do some technical things to layer the color signal over top of the black and white luminance signal. And one of those things was frame cadence. And 23976 and as opposed to 24, and later when television broadcast became dominant, 29976 versus 30 frames per second were there to allow for the technical color signal to be on the subcarrier. I would highly suggest you go look at the birth of television, black and white to color, do some research on why and there are a lot of technical articles on the actual reasons they had to fractionalize these things, and also take a side trip into drop frame versus non-drop frame and understand how they're numbering frames and how that moved along through the course of the development of television.
Yeah, and 2398 is used in the broadcast area that are doing 24. We still see most film folks that we work with are still working at real 24. So they're not working with 2398. They kind of consider 2398 this ugly thing that they have to deal with, that they prefer not to. So anyway, so we could bring probably some folks on to talk about it, and they would talk to us about it a lot. By the way, I want to go back to one. I don't usually let this happen, but I did say that I put a pin, and then I'll tell you what that microphone was that I absolutely had to have until I figured out how much it was. It was the Bronner microphones, BRAUNER microphones. Wow, did I sound great in that microphone? And well, I can't afford it. So anyway, but it's handmade German engineering. So
You got to say the price
Stefan,
now.
it was like $8,000 or something like that. It was a lot of, it was more than I could afford. So anyway, but that, and for Stefan, if you're looking for something that'll be different than all the rest of us, and we'll all go, wow. And maybe you'll find out that Dirk Bronner it lives near you. we'll do an we should do an interview with him about it, because he's a really interesting fellow. Anyway, next question.
Lois Richter, Davis, California, has what appears to be the last one in the piece, unless I haven't moved something over. And it says, is there any difference in audio between recording a radio show versus a video?
Yeah, I mean, I think that generally we want it to look good rather than to sound good. So you really decide that you're an audio priority or a video priority show. So if you're a video priority show, you're going to use a lav, or a hidden mic, or you're going to might use a something that's really not filling up the frame. If you are doing a primarily audio show, then you worry about the size of the microphone and where it is in relationship to the person, because it will sound better. And so that's kind of what you kind of think about. We have taken the route of a decidedly audio priority show, because I think a lot of people just listen to it. I think the vast majority of folks, even if they're watching on YouTube, they're listening to it, not watching it, because we're mostly discussing things. So that's why we've kind of leaned into that and making sure that it sounds as good as it possibly can. Go ahead, Bill.
Well, I 100% agree with Alex that audio is what carries most of the information. And I used to do this little thing in my lectures where I said to the audience, close your eyes and I'm going to tell you something. And then I said, open your eyes, and I'd mouth something with no audio. And I said, you had audio without video, video without audio. Which did you get more information from? And everybody suddenly realizes that it's the communications, the audio stream, that is really informing you about what that person wants to say to you. So it's critical to do that. Radio is also kind of a different beast in that it's theater of the mind, and you can make things imaginary that come alive for people. In video, you have to show them something. Now, that may be art or something else that's more artistic and less literal, but you still have to do that. Plus, the technical part of getting video out to people in broadcast was just so complex that a lot of the early audio for video was pretty modest in terms of its bandwidth and its ability to do a really good signal. We have all the tools now, and I'm really happy that Alex is prioritizing and using those for the audience who's consuming this content. I think he's doing a really good service for the audience.
And I think that, again, I'll argue that probably a vast majority of our audience will be listeners, literally audio only, by the middle of the year. So it'll probably be 80-90% will be listening to it live. That's my guess right now. That's, again, why we focus so much on it, and why we do things like Ruthless reviews for audio, and why we talk about it, and why we do a mic check every single show, is to make sure that we're really moving towards a radio show, because it's going to be something that a lot of people are going to hear us talk about things. And sure, we'll have visuals, but we'll still be talking about it. Let's go ahead and jump into the last question for the first hour. I know we ran a little over, but we're going to finish this up.
Douglas Carmichael's up for the last one. Alex, you talk about bringing in craftspeople for second hours. Wouldn't it make sense to put non-technical content in a separate sub-brand, a la Matt in the Kitchen, conversations with Tony Mobley, and so forth, and not dilute the core office hours technical focus? And there's something about a PC Magazine article title.
I think that I've thought about that a lot. Number one is that office hours is not office hours media. It is we could be office hours of lots of different things. So I think that we'll continue to expand. I mean, I think the two lowest hanging fruit beyond the conversations or the three things that I'm looking at are music, education, and cooking. very big markets that I think that we can serve effectively with what we're doing. But I also think that once a week on Thursdays is what I'm kind of looking at it. Once a week of us just thinking about the art of things and the process of things, I think is actually is valuable to us. I think it's a centering process, of kind of remembering why we do what we do, and because it's not, like we can talk about all this technical mumbo jumbo, but we're here to carry a story somewhere, to make something, to carry an idea or a story or an experience. And I think it's easy for us to get caught up in what type of mic or what cameras we're going to use or what the next new thing is, and forget that what the story was or what the experience was that we were trying to create. So I think that, and I love the idea of us seeing how different people are using this technology. I think that from a business perspective, it's good for us to see how different people are using a certain kind of technology or could use it. A lot of times when we've had artists come on in after hours or on Saturdays or whatever, like, yesterday we were talking about Santa Claus, I suddenly, I found it to be very, when Greg came on and Greg is a Santa Claus. I mean, man, he really has taken this Santa Claus to a whole nother level over Zoom. And he was showing us how he has integrated all of the 3D and the video and the keying and everything else into being Santa Claus online. Amazing, and I think, but it sparked for me a whole bunch of ideas of all these different businesses and ideas that could be more virtual, and could benefit from video. And I was thinking about how do you build all of his sets in Unreal, and how do you add global illumination and better keying and effects, and how do you set up something where someone else could be sitting there driving the reindeer? So someone else could be sitting there with a Stream Deck. So when he reaches over, he doesn't have to reach over and cue it. He just reaches over and someone else goes, oh, he's doing the thing. And he hits the button and the reindeer does the thing. And there's I started branching out in my head about all these different things that could happen. And I think that that's one of the things that's really important about seeing other people talking about art, is that we can expand what we think we can do with what we're doing. Again, we're just a vehicle to make that happen. So anyway, that's something for us to think about. All right, it's a very small Ruthless review today. Evidently, no one wanted to test their mic. so we'll go through that and then we'll answer more questions.
Well, how are we going to test all the mics of the people that are in the 2.0 training right now? There's a whole bunch of people over there.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone left and they wanted to be on two. I see. Everyone wants to watch the behind the scenes and no one wants to actually do it. So, so what we'll do is we'll go through it a little bit and then we'll go back. If you have questions about, if we spark some ideas that you have questions about while we're doing this, the goal is for us to just keep on training our ears, trying to get better at what we do, and, continuing to move this towards a really high quality radio show. And so we'll talk about it, but it's hopefully a learning experience about our pipelines. So anyway, but also if you have other first hour questions, if we run out of, we're going to get through this pretty quickly, so we can go back to answer a couple questions before the top of the hour. Anyway, so let's go ahead and jump in. I'll start with me just because I'm on my screen. I'm first. I'm using a high LPR 40. It's going into a Scorpio with a noise assist applied, and then it goes straight into Zoom. Does anyone have any, you guys can just jump in, it's a small enough group. Does anyone have any comments on it?
I think you sounded good for the last really year. I mean, I know you made a lot of changes at first, but that mic suits you really well. You obviously have a trained voice. You've been in radio for a good little bit of time. And so all of those things add up to articulate, clear, full, and I think it just comes across real strong.
Any other comments? Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
I can't understand half of what you're saying most of the time. It's a jumbled. No, of course you sound great. It's this garbled.
Wow.
He was
mess.
serious for like 1 minute. Alex is like,
really held
what?
that. You held that long. Yeah.
I think the only comment I have, and it's unique to you because you are live so much. I know you have that fancy switch, which I still don't understand totally, but there are still a little bit of desk touching stuff. Not in that test, of course, but it's just a matter of, are you going to use the the
So
mute switch.
it's funny, yeah. So I'm trying to. It's funny that you would bring that up because I've
But
been
the
very
gulps
conscious
are
to it.
gone, and that's a
Gulps
total
are gone.
plus.
I never gulp on air anymore. So I have my little button,
Glug, glug, glug.
and then I come back on again. So that's nice. And I found that I can use my as momentaries. You know, if I just need to do one
Which is
little thing.
momentary, because you muted yourself on your momentary demo.
So I have a main button which just cuts in and out, and then I have talkback buttons. So if I had Unity, I could talk back to you guys or something, and it would automatically shut my mic off. And I have found recently, oh yeah, it's a really good one. If I just need to cough or something, I can just
Because
push it
it
down.
doesn't latch.
It doesn't latch. Yeah. So now I could set it to latch. By the way, mine's the great thing about the Model 205 is that I have a control panel for it, and I can decide what every button does. You know, so like I can define what the buttons aren't mechanical; they're functional. So, what were you going to say, David?
Is that different than, I know Bill has a Rolls device that he uses for.
Yeah, his is
PTT.
mechanical. It just, I mean, not mechanical, but it closes and
Analog.
opens. It's analog.
Okay.
You know, mine is it's on Dante. So mine is a Dante. You know, Dante, and it's all driven in studio technology. I mean, it's also like 10 times more expensive. So it's not, I mean, I don't think everybody needs that. And Bill shows that he can use his very effectively, probably better than mine. But I think that I've used studio technology. What's nice about it's really compact. I also have control if I want to. If I put headphones, I don't use headphones in this. I take it straight from the computer. But if I wanted to, I can have headphones in here, and I can control talkback as well as my own side tone and everything else separately. So I have separate controls over everything. So I can kind of, play a lot with that as well, which I haven't. I bought it into the future, what I call buying into the future, which is that I know I want to be able to have talk back with all of you. We're not using that yet, but I'm not going to buy something that doesn't let me do it. so anyway, so that's why I got that there. But yeah, I'm working on the other thing that this Model 205 has is it has a contact closure, like an 1/8 inch jack that you can send signals into it. So what I'm actually working on is my mug. I'm going to build something that basically is a weight switch. So when I set my mug down, it opens up my mic, and when I pick it up, it
put a dead man switch on your drink.
As soon as I pick up my drink, my mic turns off. So.
Awesome.
I'm just like I have a whole bunch of things, and the other thing is I just want to be able to tap it right next to me. I have to reach out a little bit. I have to lift my arm and go forward just a little bit. So I'm going to put a tap right on the edge of my table, so that I can just tap without moving my hand. I can just tap open and shut the mic. And so anyway, there's a bunch of things that. So yes, that all started with I can't gulp anymore, and it's now become kind of typically with me. It's become. There'll be a NASA version of it, and there'll be something from space that's controlling it. Anyway, so there'll be an Isadora patch that does the whole thing.
Sometimes when you, I notice you sometimes just realign your mic a little bit with your boom.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a couple of inches out or something, and they get some boom noise when you do that.
And I usually try to block.
Right.
I usually try to do that, but sometimes I forget. Yeah, part of it's getting my lower brain to just get used to turning off the mic all the time, which I do more and more often.
I thought that was some fancy boom mic that didn't make noise.
No, it's a fancy boom that lets me put it anywhere I want. They didn't promise Matt not making any noise.
Do you hear this?
No.
Pretty cool, huh?
Special. All right, let's jump to Rupert. Go ahead, Rupert.
So I'm pretty modest here. I'm using a Behringer X something 8500, which is their equivalent of a SM58. And that goes into a very short XLR cable straight into a Behringer 502, which is their little mixer. That does have like high-low EQ on it, but I'm running that flat at the moment. I had that tuned a different way, but I think the opinion was it sounded better flat. And that goes down a very short cable straight into the computer. I have been, and I am basically original sound off because of room noise, and that's kind of where I've been working recently. So I've got the computer in a cabinet. So I'm isolating that noise, and I've realized that I've got a noisy light over there. So I'm going to try and resolve that, and then I should be at a state of room where I should be able to go to original audio on, hopefully. And then it's just a matter of working with the CFO to go the mix pre-6 route and so on. I've seen a couple of people, do the mix pre-3 and then quickly run out of channels and realized they should have done the mix pre 6. So that's what I'm holding out for.
I would get the mix pre 6. I have mix pre 3 and immediately want more channels.
And I bought the 6 thinking I needed a 3 and filled it up, and I wish I had a 10.
It's like a bag. You can never have too many inputs. I've gotten to the point now where I can hear when original audio is off. It just sounds like you're going through a smaller pipe, like you're just not a lot of real lows and not a lot of real highs. So it lacks a little air, in that area. It's clean. It's quiet.
I can try
solid.
it real quick with,
Yeah, go ahead.
So this is original sound off. I'm going to turn it on now. Original sound is on. I'll give you a little bit of silence. And then I'll keep talking a little more, and then I will toggle it back off. It's now off, and I'm talking again with original sound off.
Very listenable, but you can see that if we had the sound assist on with original audio on, I think you'd end up with a lot more dynamic range in your voice. I think that's the thing that we're kind of losing there.
And is
it's really interesting. Can you turn that on again and talk a little bit?
So this is still with it off, and then I'm going to go with original sound on. This is on. I'll just keep talking for a little while and then give you a little bit of silence. And then keep talking again with original sound is still on, and then I'll go off. This is original sound off, talking into the microphone, some more with original sound off.
Yeah, I think that there is a utility to what when original sound is off, there's a utility to it. It's listenable. We totally understand it. But you really, when you turn it on and off with yours, you can really hear the difference in that total range of your voice. It just sounds a lot more natural, but with a lot more noise. Yeah, you get a lot more. I'd rather you have original audio off right now. I would love to hear what that sounds like as with a noise assist at like 6 or 7.
Is it room reverberance or room as in noise floor?
A noise floor.
Right. Okay.
That's why I think the noise assist will work really well, is because it's just a steady hum. It sounds like fans.
I think the fact that you've chosen to sit in your room diagonally helps block out all the reverberance, because you don't have those. You don't have like if I sit like this and I talk like this, I have a wall of monitors here and a wall like very close behind me.
Right.
The standing reflective waves are going to go right over your shoulder.
And although I'm against these walls, there's all shelves and clutter and stuff and whatnot. So it's not as if it's
not clutter. It's audio diffusion.
It's sound treatment.
Yeah.
That's what I keep on telling my wife with all the mess that I have. It's all sound treatment, technical sound treatment. All right, good, David.
Okay, this is my trusty old Tascam TM180, and it's going into a Rolls MP13 that I've actually added a little gain staging to, I guess, but not much. And then straight into the ATEM for nothing there. It's all flat. But then I have a second mic. I'll check it after we ruthlessly review this one. Is
original audio on or off?
I have it off. I can turn it on, and I'll do let's give it this is me with original sound off, and I'll toggle it on at this point, and now it's on, and I'll be quiet for a minute. And I'll continue talking.
And that noise is that's self noise within the components that you have. That's not a fan. Like I can hear that sounds like noise that is coming from the components themselves. So that's noisy preamps or noisy processing as it goes through. It's an electronic noise.
Yeah, I noticed that a couple days ago, and I'm going to tear things apart. But let me just check the second mic in. Quick. So this is the Realistic 33306 coming straight into the ATEM. This is a piece of this is horrible.
Oh, it's a realistic piece, all right.
If you're trying to do retro, if you're trying to go very retro and very like a telephone call or something like that, like with a little bit of work, that would take you to a telephone call really fast.
All right. I've noticed that electronic noise in the chain. I'm going to relay cables and try to tighten that up a little.
Yeah, and I would love to. I just know how good your voice is. Like I can just tell, but we're getting like a quarter of it. Like your current chain, we're getting like a quarter of what your voice would be almost overwhelming. Like for a lot of us, if it sounds so good, and but you're holding back on us. That's all I'm saying. Which is probably safe for us. It probably,
We'll see what Santa
damage
does.
our yeah. So, but you know, I don't know if we could withstand it. But I can tell how rich your voice is, but that's not what we're getting from the current chain. I mean, your voice will go through anything, but we're getting just a very small percentage of what it does. So
I'll do some Boxing Day shopping and see what kind of deals I can find.
Very good, very good, Jason.
All right. This is a Heil PR40 going into, let's see, an AFX channel, and then straight into the ATEM. Oh, man, I am messing it up today. Straight into the 6K Pro, and that's pretty much all she wrote.
And your original audio is on or off?
Original audio for me is almost always on. I can count on one hand the number of times I've had to turn it off.
And what mic are you using? The PR40? Can you? What's it going through again?
The PR40 through a quad, whatever it's called. A difference in graphic.
You're a couple decibels
He's
low.
trying to listen to me. Sorry. Yeah, I am a little low. Heil PR40 in through a star quad cable into an AFX channel and then into the 6K Pro.
What are you doing in the AFX?
Very little. And in fact, the last Audio Ruthless review, you had me turn off the exciter. It's basically a fancy preamp and just a gate. That's all it's doing.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I think it's pretty good. It's feels like it could be a little thin, but not a ton. It just feels like it's little thin. We're now getting into
I'm overdriving it, or I'm not.
No, it's just
using
that we're not getting a lot of bass response for that mic.
Here's how I would describe it, Alex. If I was mixing you and you were talking now, my hands would go to the EQ first.
Yeah.
And I don't know what I would exactly what I would change, but that's where I'd be reaching. I'd be reaching for the EQ.
Let me pull a little bit of a change here because I'm a baritone. I actually have a really low voice. I just get excited a lot, and then it gets even more kind of articulate and just as low. Does that change that at all?
Not a lot.
I'm really, really I do not crank audio. I've done enough audio to not ever push it.
Jason, one of the things I'm hearing is that I'm hearing more lungs than diaphragm. And that's often, Rupert was the same thing. And that's typically somebody who hasn't done a lot of training in terms of either singing or speaking and work on that diaphragm shift, which we talked about in radio classes decades ago, and I just always have done.
Yeah, I mean, you'll know that you can, you'll know that you're reverberating with your diaphragm when you can feel right here. You'll feel your lungs vibrating, and that's when you're there.
Yeah, right at your sternum.
But you'll feel it. You'll feel it like you'll feel the air going in and out of your. You can get to a point where you can feel it going in and out of your lungs, and when you do that, you're speaking from that point. But I think overall it sounds really good. I mean, it's again, I feel like you're probably losing a little bit on the bass. Go ahead, Bill.
Okay, here we go. So I'm speaking into a Sennheiser MKH 416. It is going into a Rolls mic mute. Let me see if I can pull up the little chain here picture. Oops, wrong way. That's interesting that does that. So, and that's feeding into the Universal Audio Apollo Solo. I have pulled everything out of the Apollo Solo. So literally there is nothing in the chain between the microphone and the Apollo Solo on off to Zoom.
Except for the mic mute.
Yeah, except for the mic mute.
And you're on original audio.
No, original sound is off, and I have a little bit of room noise here. Let me go ahead, and I'm leaving the mic on, and I'm going to switch original sound from off to on. That is original sound. So everything is off out of the chain. There's should be enough fan in the background even if it's low, but maybe this mic changes because I put that on there when I was back in the Neumann TLM 103.
It's decidedly less present when you turn original audio on. It definitely falls
less present.
I wouldn't expect that.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Do you have like a gain boost in Zoom that adds anything to it?
I don't think so. Let me go back really quickly and check the Zoom preferences and see if there's anything in the audio chain here. I'm looking down the controls. I mean, suppress background noise is on low because I try to make it as common
You
as
definitely can
possible.
hear some background noise. I mean, we definitely hear fan or something.
Yeah, there
back
is a
there.
little bit. I think that's the old laptop. I'm really looking forward to my M1 purchase coming up because I understand those fans seldom come on. And in fact, in the voice booth, I'm putting in a little M1 MacBook because they're fanless. I'm looking forward to that.
I will say, Bill,
Mhm.
that the way you sound now, in my opinion, sounds better than your voice booth ever did when you used to broadcast from your voice booth.
Yeah,
I
agree.
thought in my
Yeah, I completely agree.
when I close my eyes, all I hear is a little box with foam in it. Like I can totally see it. In my mind's eye, I can hear that room. You sound way better like this than your voice booth. I don't know what you want to do with that information, but listen to yourself. Do some sample recordings both ways. You may want to change the way you're working. Just a thought.
Let's go to Noah.
That's interesting. Thank you.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I am using a Heil PR40 into my MixPre 3. It does have 6 decibels of noise assist currently on. And then going into my M1 Mac, we're looking at Zoom now. Zoom does have original sound that is turned on. And I'm going to just keep talking. Feel free to cut me off when you feel like you have enough. I have a Sony FS5 as my camera, and I am looking into a teleprompter. It's a 24-inch teleprompter from Prompter People in front of me. Yeah, I would say I'm a good 3 to 4 inches away from the microphone typically with a little windscreen. And I have some simple lights. I have an Aperture 1x1 panel that's about 6 years old. Right in front of me is my key. I do not currently have a rim or a backlight, and I do have kind of a slash side light to my right, which is also filling in. Just taking a pause there for a second.
I think it sounds good.
Okay.
I don't know if I have any comments for you. There's a little bit of noise. There's a little bit of like either there's just a really subtle little bit of noise. It's not totally quiet. And if you have a noise assist, it usually means it's coming in after that. What happens after?
Interesting. MixPre 3, I have USB-C to an M1 Mac.
That's it. Okay, so
That's it. Yeah, no, I don't use audio hijack or anything. I've considered it for, adding compression or something, but I haven't done anything. It's no, essentially no EQ. It's straight from the microphone at this point. Yeah. Do you want me to keep talking here for a moment?
And what is the noise assist set to?
It's at -6. I can also let me dial that down. So I'm going to talk and I'm going to take this away. So now this is 0.
It's incredible.
It's
turn up to
so
8.
powerful. Sure. All right. I'm going to slowly crank this down. We're at 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So now we're at 8. This is 8 decibels of noise assist. And you should,
incredible.
It's so good.
So good. It's just what I'm noticing is how much more natural it is than Zoom. The Zoom one is very, it's a butcher knife, like of how it does it. It does it well. It cuts it off. And sometimes I go, I wonder whether we really need noise assist if we have Zoom's, original audio off or whatever. Does it really make a difference? And I think we can clearly.
Do we know if Zoom has changed their algorithms on their noise
it keeps getting
suppression in
better.
the last year and a half?
I think it has. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's gotten way better. They're definitely. I think their noise suppression has gotten continually better than what it was before. Let's go ahead. Let's go jump to. It sounds really good, Noah. Now let's go to John.
So this is the Fenwick studio. Can you guys hear me okay? Because this is a new mic setup for me. It looks a little
We can
low.
hear you. Yeah, a little more. Sounding good.
So I'm going to call this the Fenwick studio because he came and he changed all my settings for everything. So now this is a Heil PR40 into a Pro V Mackie on this setup over here on this side.
Can you get closer to that microphone? I mean,
Original sound. I'm right next to it. I'm 2 inches away now.
Yeah, that's better.
That sounds way better.
Much better.
Yeah, it's
with the Heil, the distance is a massive difference. Like every inch for the first 3 inches makes a difference. You know, it's definitely sounds better when you're closer.
Okay, I'll leave it right here in my mouth.
Wow.
I've got a little bit more gain. It looks like I'm hitting 24. Okay.
Yeah, like lean in to where you're almost touching it and say something.
I am like 1 inch away right now.
Yeah, and then pull back again.
This is where I would normally stand, right in here.
Yeah, yeah. It's doesn't take very much. The off-axis rejection is so much.
That is the classic proximity effect on a dynamic, and it's
which a lot of us like. People go,
time.
"Oh, but it's got the proximity effect." I'm like, "Yeah, that's the point. That's the point, that it has the proximity effect."
But you look uncomfortable, John. You look like you're hunched over.
You want to pull that mic towards you.
The camera's crooked. That's why. When I put it back up, I couldn't get it. It's got the Manfrotto super clamp, and it's got the lever on it, and it's really tough because I have to get
that
it.
lever is almost impossible to set. When I was playing with it, like you put it where you think you want it, and then it's difficult because it's back behind all this stuff. So then you flick the lever, and it's like somebody. It takes a sledgehammer to the camera right as you're locking it down. It's like, that's not where I wanted it.
Hey, we're going to allow this to go a little bit over, but we're not going to get to all the questions because a lot of questions came in. So what you should do is definitely jump in there. The producer should look in there and vote on questions of which ones they want us to talk about before we close up the show. So let's go ahead and jump to Chris.
Oh wait, I have a graphic to put up which will help tell the story, but I've lost.
Does it rhyme with Fenwick?
It rhymes with Fenwick. So in my lower Fenwick, you'll notice the green line between my microphone and my noise assisted Mix Pre 6. That's because that too is a Canary Quad Star cable that is green.
There you go.
That's why that's green there. And then it goes into my Mac. I am using the noise assist. I don't remember what it's set at. It's like at 6 or 8 or 17 or I don't know. It's around 9 or 8 or something like that. And that's it. I think I'm using the compression in the Mix Pre, but I have since bypassed all of the audio hijack stuff, and it's literally just out of this. I do use a loop back. It does use a loop back patch to get it into Zoom. So I don't actually select the Mix Pre. I go through loop back, and I can't specifically remember why that seems necessary at the time, but it's doing something that I don't want to break.
I think it sounds great. I don't have any notes. I don't have any notes. It sounds natural. It has air. That mic is just a great mic. I got lucky every time you use it, because you and I have exactly the same mic, and I don't use it very often because it makes so much noise. All that rattling, like all that stuff that bother you now, it gets worse. I have that mic.
Yeah, and I don't know why. And like,
I may put it on though. Now I want to use it for Mac Break.
So Preto and I did a little research, and I pinged Jason. Jason holds the record for the longest period of time, maybe not most days, but the longest period of time with a single microphone. Because Jason,
worthless record.
Jason predates my involvement in office hours by a day or two, but I have never changed my mic. Jason has never changed his mic, and I think we're the only two that can say that.
There you go.
It's not that I don't have more mics. I really like the EV27, but
it's not a competition. I'm just saying you've used that Heil. It's not a competition, but I am saying that you won.
Is that reverse inverse psychology? That's what I heard there.
Exactly. Alan, let's go ahead.
Okay, I'm going. Well, I have my Rode Podcaster going into Voice Meter Potato, and then straight out I've got original sound off, and I think it's currently sounding about as good as I can make it, because I know nothing about audio basically.
I think it sounds good. I don't have any. It's clean. I feel like I'm getting full range.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a completely flat. I have a small gate on the voice meter because this is the noisiest room, even though it's a shed. I have chickens just literally the other side of my wall.
How many chickens do you have?
Wow.
Oh, I don't have any chickens. My neighbor, who has, and we have a very small garden. We're talking 200 feet by 80 feet wide garden, and I think she's got about 40.
Yeah. So do you get free eggs?
Occasionally, very occasionally, but that's it. Also, there's a lot of fans in this in here. My machine's really fan. So
I don't hear those.
Well, if I go to original sound on and I keep quiet for a second.
Keep talking.
Yeah, so this is with the original sound on. I think it's coming through. It actually, for me, sounds a lot better actually. So I'm hoping, if it is, I will leave it on. I'm a bit quieter now.
I do find that when you turn original sound on, it definitely makes you quieter.
Okay. I'm actually at -3 on voice meter, which the trouble is I know nothing about audio. Video I know a little bit about, but
yeah, a little bit more. There's a little bit more noise, obviously, in it than with audio off. It does sound more natural. I think that in general, I think what we're finding is when original audio is off, it just doesn't sound. It's just pumping it. It's not just getting rid of the noise. It's taking the voice and pushing it forward, and so it just has this kind of more of a vertical thing to it. But I think that I still would probably have original audio. It's close, but I probably still have original audio off for yours.
Yeah.
There's enough self noise in there that I do like to avoid having the hiss, the presence there.
Yes.
So,
yeah. I think also it would help. I'm still not confident on camera and mic, so I'm hoping over time that'll get a bit better.
Right. Let's go to the next. Let's go to Dennis. I can't hear you, but there's no hiss. Still can't hear you.
Some sound assist.
Dennis is actually talking in the other meeting right now.
Yes.
Oh,
there we
God.
are.
Okay, we'll move. Okay.
Yeah, I'm here now. I think you can hear me. I had taken the precaution of making sure that my audio was not on here in case I am muted while I was talking to people in the other meeting.
Right.
So, yeah. My setup is an M Audio Nova going into a Panasonic HCX1000, which is then plugged in via HDMI to my ATEM. And that then goes into my Mac and into Zoom. On my ATEM software, I'll wake it up again. I have a little bit of EQ taking out the very low end, and then I've got an expander and a compressor turned on at a reasonably low level.
Yeah, so I can hear the rattle, a gate rattle. And what I mean by that is when the gate is working, it works. But what happens is that when you start talking, we hear that background noise suddenly come in with you. I tend to call it a gate rattle, which is just that you hear this because it comes in with your voice because it was gating out before that, and then it comes in with it. I hear a little of your room, just the I can hear the walls in your room.
The fans on my iMac are going a bit as well. So you may be picking those up a little. They're calming down now.
Is the room carpeted?
It is.
But a lot of flat surfaces.
Yes. So it's flat walls. I'm not exactly parallel to the walls. I'm pointing sort of diagonally into a corner currently.
Right.
Maybe more tree diffusers.
I need more Christmas trees.
More Christmas trees. There we go.
Oh, of course, all of this will change in 2 weeks' time anyway. So,
okay. Well, it's really good. I mean, we are really. This is like I don't know even radio shows that go this far. So it sounds really good. As I said, I just hear just a little bit of the room, and I can hear a little bit of this gate rattle when your gate opens. I can hear that kind of the other stuff coming through with your voice, which is what it's gating out in between.
Yeah.
But you notice it a lot. Maybe
Well,
make it
when I move, I
maybe
will
the
be-
knee. If the knee was like the attack was just a little slower, you may find that it's not as noticeable.
And I think, Dennis, compared to some of the other panelists, your distance from the mic is what, like 8 inches or so? What would that be? Meters?
Yeah, so that much.
What happens if you get closer?
I can lean in like this. Unfortunately, I've got the Elgato low profile arm. It's connected to the back of my desk, which is really the only place it will go. And with my current configuration, it's probably not reaching quite as far as I'd like it to. I can lean right into the mic like that and see how much difference that makes.
It definitely sounds better.
Yeah.
that's always the case. Getting within 3 inches of a mic is generally the best thing to do.
Yeah. When I move, 2 things. I'll be treating the walls, and I will also work out a way of mounting the arm in a way that I can have it much closer to my mouth.
And a lot of this isn't so much a proximity effect thing as much as it is when the mic's further away, you're turning it up to get to your voice, and then you're bringing the whole room up with you. And that's so you're bringing the whole noise floor with it. So it's less of a proximity effect thing and more of the closer the mic is, the more you can turn it down and then not hear any of the small reverberations that might be happening in your room.
Classic signal to noise ratio.
Yeah, exactly.
The other thing that I'd mention quickly is that I have my little teleprompter. So when I get my new room set up, I'll obviously want to position that in a way that is more useful than the current position. My plan is that my desk won't be against a wall, so I will be able to have the tripod behind in between 2 of the monitors. Right. So it'll just be a more useful layout for me.
Let's go to Josh. Josh, you're the last one.
Yep, coming back from the 2.0. So I did not get a mic check. So the first opening will be my mic check. Looks like I'm about 24 if my delay is not too bad. So my audio chain, I'm using an ADK S51, going into a Scarlett into voice meter and out into Zoom. Currently with the original sound off, and I do have an EQ on. I also have a pop filter, and I wanted to check that one out as well, but I'll take my first volleys with that sample.
What happens when you turn the original audio on?
Okay, so going to original on.
I don't hear anything. You're not talking, are you?
Hold on a second. There we go.
I had my eyes closed listening. I had my eyes closed listening.
We all hear it, Alex. What's wrong?
I've gone crazy. I've lost my mind.
Yeah, I'm thinking, okay, so this is with original sound on and with the addition of my EQ. With the EQ off, this is with the EQ removed. And once again, this is with the EQ added on, and original sound is on.
I actually like it better with the EQ off than when it's on. I think you're cutting. Are you cutting off some of your lows? On the EQ.
I'm cutting about.
You're thinning out your signal.
Okay.
I wouldn't do that.
Turn that. So I turned off the low cut. That's what the low cut removed in the EQ. How does that sound? I'm going to go ahead and say I'm in a ADK microphone into a Focusrite and into.
And that's original audio is on.
And original sound is on.
And I would stick with original sound on. I would get rid of that low cut filter. Any other comments?
I would just say, unless you have AC rumble and or outside and you have wind noise, I don't think there are any other circumstances where I ever engage low cut on a mic, particularly if I'm inside.
Okay. And I've recently moved all of my machines to the next room, so there's no more computer noise. The other thing I wanted to try too, so as far as the plosives, is with the pop filter. And you can tell me if it's coming through, especially with original sound on.
It doesn't make any difference with the sound. It's just too big. Like that's too much pop.
Yeah. This is, I don't
like
have
we put our mics in, but that's a lot of mic. That becomes like a lot of.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I have one that's coming that's, the side address, but I'm just curious about, so you don't hear any difference as far as the plosives?
No. You weren't having a
with
plosive
pop
issue before.
Okay.
And David's showing another version of a pop filter.
Yeah, that's on its way. Yeah.
Sounds good though. I mean, overall, because we do mic checks all the time, and because we do this occasionally, again, I listen to our stuff. I like it better because you have to remember that we're doing it from home. Like if you listened, like I got to a point where it was hard for me to listen to NPR because, I can say that anyway.
Dogs yipping in the background, and you take your pick.
Well, no, but you could hear the rooms. The Neumann mics, they just sent the Neumann mics home, and I could hear all of their rooms. I could hear, and I could almost guess like that's a dining room, that's a kitchen, that's a bed. Like I get like that they're in doing their show, and so that's part of it is that we're doing something very challenging, and we're doing it better than most. So it's
and that's something I'm curious about too. So room noise, and since I don't have any machine noise now, you'll probably hear my noise more. So here's me speaking, and since I have original sound on, I usually leave it off, but now that I have original sound on, and tell me about room noise, and then I'm gonna be silent.
Very little. I mean, little to no. We're hearing almost nothing.
So, and I've got Monitor City, so it's helped. I've pushed them a little bit further away.
Yeah.
So a little bit less refraction. Okay, so I might just go with the original sound on from now on in.
Can we get a Ruthless display review one day for Josh? My goodness, dude.
He's trying to set the record, apparently.
Oh, that was bad. Wow.
Yeah.
I've got it down to like, I don't know, 6 speakers, six screens. I
want to see Josh's screenshots again. What do you got, Josh?
Screen?
This is more than one system.
That's
you
so
have
great.
The second system up there, and then I have my
It's so funny
teleprompter.
because we always look so unassuming when you look at any of our kits. That's why I sometimes like to do the behind the scenes, is because all of our kits look like unassuming, like we're just hanging out, on a webcam, and this is easy. And then you cut back to us, and we have these like arrays, like that are just sitting in front of us, and it's just such a funny thing that everything looks so unassuming. Yeah, everybody. I mean, not everybody, but most of us have these like crazy setups that we keep on adding
Nothing
monitors
to see
to.
here. Nothing to see.
It's so good. All right,
My wife told me off for it.
Yeah, she told you what?
Yeah, she told me off for having too many monitors, and I'm now going to take a screenshot of Josh's and go, I'm allowed a couple more. I mean, I've only got 6 in front of me, but that's
Exactly.
2 machines.
Exactly.
You're welcome.
All right, let's jump in. We've got a couple questions. We won't get to all of them. So again, for our producers, we're going to go a little over. It's like Christmas week or whatever. So we'll go a little over, but we won't be able to get to all of them. So definitely vote questions up if you want us to talk to them. Let's go ahead and jump into that, Bill.
Noah Sargent, Fullerton, California. Up first, how does the noise assist on the Mixed Pre 3 compare to your Scarlett, Alex?
My Scarlett? I don't know if it's my so I don't have a Scarlett.
I'm sorry, whatever's
Scorpion.
in line there. Scorpion, thank you.
Oh, the same. It's the same preamp and the same. The preamps I believe are the same between the two machines, and as is the noise assist. I have 2 channels of it, or more channels of it available to me, but it should be the same as the Scorpio. The Scorpio just gives you a lot more processing outputs. Dante, there's a bunch of other things that it does, but the raw mic and noise assist not affected by it. Next question.
Morgan Price in Victoria, British Columbia in Canada says, is there a good time in after hours to do less Ruthless reviews?
Go ahead, Chris.
Any time, Morgan. Like literally just drop in, raise your little digital hand. That's the one place where we use that. Somebody will be rambling on me probably about something you don't want to hear about. And then somebody will cut me off and they'll say, what can we do for you? And just hop in. We don't bite.
Yeah.
We'll gladly help you out.
David?
Yeah, and the next question in line, it looks like we might favor that right as we go into after hours today. So come on by, bring your mic, and we'll do our best.
Yeah, we'll just continue this conversation if you want to jump in. But yeah, as Chris said, anytime you want to jump in, that's a big part of after hours is figuring out noodling with kit, like, oh, I don't really understand how Zoom does this, or I'm playing with my camera, or I'm playing with my mic, or I have some new graphics, or like all of those things are things that we're trying to learn, and we all learn from it. I think a lot of people get into this thing like, oh, I'm asking a question that I shouldn't ask in after hours. We learn. If someone walks you through, I don't understand my mix pre, or I don't understand. There was one recently where we were walking through, the loop back and all those things. There's a whole bunch of us learning from that. Just because you're asking it, don't ever always feel like that after hours is a safe place to ask those questions. And, everyone's, just listening and absorbing that new lesson, that new thing. We're being immunized from that problem later. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Tony Mobley. Well, that's actually the one that was referred to. Is there any chance to have Ruthless reviews
we'll do it
at the beginning of Office Hours today? So let's move on to Stefan Fischers from Würzburg, Germany. I suffer a little from using the invisible Bumblebee sidekick so that I can hear good sound on the other panel members. Any recommendations about this?
Yeah, the sidekicks do lack a low end. You'll notice that I was clicking. I was switching what I was listening to or maybe you didn't notice that, but I was switching what I was listening to during the while you guys were doing the mics, because I don't trust the Bumblebees to give me a full representation of what I'm listening to there. But you can definitely get better in ears. So I mean, not better. The Bumblebees feel very invisible, but you can get more powerful in ears that are going to give you a lot more data. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I was going to say exactly the same thing. I'm using a little, it's basically a security earphone for my monitoring of the show. But whenever we do anything that's audio related, I switch to a set of real headphones that I understand how they sound, because all those little diaphragms, with very few exceptions, there are some really good ones out there, but they don't sound the same. They don't have full range.
I will say that I did get this was based on other recommendations, the Linsol KZ, I don't know, ZSXBA1DD, whatever. And for about $60, it was suddenly I realized how much I wasn't hearing. And it was like a little overwhelming, and I had to set it down again because it was just so much of hearing what was going on there. And so I should put it back in, because then I'd be more sensitive to all the little tic-tacs that Chris was talking about. So but I gave him to my daughter. She's got the coolest in-ears for her band. So anyway, I have to now go back and get another pair. All right, and let's jump into the next question.
Lois Richter, Davis, California. In Zoom, one can hold down the space bar to temporarily override a muted mic. Does that make more or less noise that clicking mute then clicking mute, unmute? That might be more useful to folks like me that sometimes forget to unmute after speaking.
Go ahead, Rupert.
Well, the comparison really depends on how loud your mouse click is and how clickety-click your keyboard is. I mean, I tend to use quiet mice anyway, and if I do ever use the space bar, I would just press it gently, and so that it was silent-ish. But really and truly, the feedback from Zoom, or the confirmation whether you're unmuted or not, is going to come from that little microphone icon. And the only way you're really going to see that or the most reliable way of seeing it, is clicking on it. So some discipline there really pays off.
Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, kind of what Rupert was saying. It really depends too about whether you have a mechanical keyboard or a membrane keyboard. They tend to be a lot less noise as far as clicking on it. But the security that Rupert touched on, I can second that, because particularly, it might not affect you, Lois, but if you have more than one Zoom instance, you can't really trust keyboard shortcuts to control the correct one. So yeah, the safest thing is to hit the button.
Next question.
Morgan Price, Victoria, British Columbia, says, augmenting a live discussion with pre-built content, video, images, animation, and so forth. Does the panel have best practices for great examples of how to augment a live discussion, triggered by Alex's comment of high-density content today?
All right, go ahead, Noah.
I would highly recommend, obviously, pre-taping some parts of the whole event, right? And then those could be more concentrated and more dense in that sense, because you have edits and you can have pre-rolled videos, B-roll cutover stuff, which is great. And then you can go to a live Q&A and basically give that chance for the audience to respond to you. I would also suggest starting with 2 or 3 canned questions just in case, they might be frequently asked questions or maybe additional bullet points that you wanted to hit, right? You can form that in that first or second Q&A question.
Go ahead, Chris.
There's 2 ways to pre-tape things. You can pre-tape something that you roll into the show, in which case the pacing and density of that needs to be very similar to a live presentation. So really the benefit of pre-taping it is just so you don't actually make a mistake. However, if you're gonna, what's the education gimmick called where you send them
Flip the classroom.
Flip the classroom. If you're gonna flip the classroom, then you can really create something that's very dense. It can be tight, it can be brief, it can be nuanced, because the people have a chance to watch it more than once. And so you really have to draw that distinction before you decide how you're going to pre-tape anything.
The other thing to really keep on thinking about is the fact that you can give that content to people early. If you giving it to them at the event makes it actually very hard for them to come up with the questions. That starting the handful of 3 questions or 4 questions, if you give people somewhere to put the questions in ahead of time, you're going to pre-populate those questions. If you do something repeatedly, the audience will learn that you're going to actually answer their questions. Part of the problem the very first time you do an event, you don't get a lot of questions, is because you haven't trained your audience that that's possible. They don't, so that part of their brain is dormant. And that is so important, is to get an audience thinking about, I can have questions answered, changes the way they think all the time. Not just during the show, because they're now thinking of, I have somewhere to put that. Like, I have somewhere to go with that. So number one is yearly events or quarterly events are not nearly as useful as weekly or monthly events, because you're training your audience, you're building this relationship with them so that they know that you're going to answer those questions and they're more likely to think about those questions. And so that is a big piece of that. And then give them the content early so they can think about it. And then they come in with a head of steam. And then that's how you kind of, fill that up. Next question.
Next one comes from Chris in Wisconsin. He says some panel members seem to have video that looks sharper than others. Is this a consequence of the camera or some other factor like network or something else? What should I shoot for to not be lower resolution?
Go ahead, Bill.
Well, we talk about signal chain a lot, and that is all the components and all the connections between the components in a chain. Obviously, if you start out with a really high-res camera, even if it takes some little technical hits along the way, you're more likely to end up with higher resolution final things. It's also possible, though, to start off with a good camera and have something in your signal chain that's going to down-res it. So you just have to be mindful of the whole thing from beginning to end. One of the things that a lot of us have done is move up to really good cameras like the Blackmagic 6Ks or 4Ks. And so we start off with a really strong signal, and then even if it gets a little hit along the way, it's still going to look really good when it comes out to zoom.
Go ahead, Alan.
Yeah, Bill covered most of it then. For me, it's the lighting is the first. Good lighting on a bad camera and a good camera helps no end. And then I've got a fairly okay SLR. But it's not a modern Blackmagic or anything, and then a fairly good capture card, and that helps it. And as Bill was saying, keeps it the chain level, as it were. Also, then having a good solid internet connection. No Wi-Fi, making sure you are wired in so that you don't get any dropouts there. That will make sure you actually keep the resolution up as well.
Yeah. Go ahead, Rupert.
In terms of the differences that you may see on the panel right now, I'm just looking at everybody. I think I'm probably the only one using a Brio, so that may explain some of the difference there. But as far as I know, we've all got plenty of bandwidth, or certainly enough for HD. If you are wondering, how to get a good-looking HD signal elsewhere, a big part of the factor here is that we're in a 1080p meeting in Zoom. That's not something you'll necessarily see or find everywhere else. So if you're looking to achieve the same results elsewhere, you'll need to bear in mind everything that's also been said already, but be in an environment or in a pipeline meeting in Zoom where you have access to that 1080p. Otherwise, you're going to see that lower resolution.
Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, and as to what Rupert said, likely, depending on what you're watching it on, Chris, likely you're getting the same pixel resolution as other people, but what makes a difference is contrast. So those pixels can be working harder for one camera or the other. I've gone into meetings, and that's the compliment I get. Oh, wow, your video is crazy high resolution. I'm using the same resolution as everyone else. But if you have a depth of field, if you have contrast in your image, then it really brings in what you see, and what is the apparent resolution seems much higher.
Yeah, absolutely. The softer depth of field makes a huge difference. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Jason Panks in Nashville, Tennessee. He says, any plugin or software equivalents to noise assist?
Go ahead, David. I can't hear you.
There's a product called Crisp with a K, KRISP, that will do it. Don't know if it's as good, but it's there.
Yeah, and then there's RX plugins for NVIDIA boards if you have a PC that also will do that if the board will support it. Go ahead, Chris.
I will say that Crisp plugin is built into Discord, and it's pretty amazing. Like, I don't know how to use it elsewhere, but I was pretty shocked by it. It's like, wow, that's really good. But Discord has some other issues.
Yeah, go ahead, Rupert.
Yeah, Crisp is pretty good. It's free. It's a free tier, and then for substantial use, it comes at a price. If you're not using it through a application that natively supports it, it installs itself as like a virtual audio device rather than a plugin. So just make sure that you're ready for that change in your kind of pipeline if that's the way you go.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's up next. He says, what are the advantages of running audio through an ATEM versus an external mixer or audio interface? And how do you deal with sync issues when using an external audio pipeline?
Go ahead, Noah.
So obviously you could inject audio in several places in the signal flow, right? So specifically with an ATEM, the reason you would insert it in there, right, is to save cost on an external device, right? Because it's all in one. The disadvantage of that, as you kind of mentioned, the preamps aren't as good, right? We've talked about that before. Specifically with audio interface, especially like the ones we typically use, you have those extra features like a noise assist or the sidetone, that kind of stuff. As far as syncing goes, typically the thing that will be off is audio, and so there is a built-in delay within the Mix Pre 3 that you can set. You can do that in OBS or another streaming software, right? There are ways of doing that. Video is a little bit harder because it takes a lot more processing to do that. So typically it's audio that you adjust.
Next question.
Next question comes to us from Lois Richter in Davis, California. And Lois says, when you change original sound, perhaps you can also look at the meters and adjust things so we can listen to the two at the same time.
Yeah, it'd be fun to look at that in kind of deep analysis of the audio to see what Zoom is doing. I know we've done that a little bit in the past, but I think we could probably take another pass at that. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Alex Buckland in the UK, and he asks, which mic was Chris using?
Chris?
I use a Neumann TLM 102. It happens to be the one that they sell at Guitar Center. I would like to say that I auditioned a bunch of mics to pick the one that sounded best on my voice. As it turned out, I went into Guitar Center and said, ooh, that looks cool. And I took it out. So I totally got lucky. And I understand that oftentimes condenser mics like this mic add a bunch of extra noise, and the noise assist really alleviates that.
Next question.
Lois Richter in Davis, California, right back with, what's the cheapest teleprompter, and can you use it with a Mac Air laptop or what?
Go ahead, Josh.
The cheapest teleprompter is just to get a piece of the glass and hang it. That's what I did. So that is just a piece of glass hanging on top of a monitor. You can get, that one's a 16-inch, fits a 16-inch monitor for $50. I got an AliExpress. I can leave it in Mukana. Obviously, the disadvantage of that is it's not portable. You can't move it around. But all you need to do is have the glass in the right place, and that leaves it a lot more.
Silver?
Yeah, it's actual teleprompter glass, but it's actually, they sell like the replacements. So I actually bought one that was had some glass broken and had the replacement of it. So yeah, it's just in the right spot with the 15.5-inch monitor.
Right. That's great. All right, Rupert.
Yeah, so I picked up this one a little while back, this teleprompter. I got it for I got it for 90 something $6 at the time, and it's a little more expensive now, but it's pretty good for what it is. It's very got good construction, and then you can use that with an iPad or a separate monitor. And I just picked up one of these eYoYo 10-inch displays, and this does the flip. This was like $90 or something, so it comes together as a pretty economic solution.
Next question.
Next one comes from Todd Rains in Allen, Texas. As you do your audition review, can you go through how you set up a mix minus or other mixes for your workflows?
Yeah, I mean, I think that for all of us, we do it slightly differently. But the main thing with a mix minus is that you need multiple buses. So you need a bus that's going to go to you and a bus that's going to go back. And that main bus that's going out includes, typically everything but what's coming in. So it's mix minus what's coming to you. In a bus, if you were looking at analog, you would have another bus that you were listening to or you were talking into, and you would turn your own channel down, so that you turn your everything, the channel coming to you down, so you wouldn't go back out. Otherwise, you get a perfect echo. You can always tell when we don't have a mix minus because we hear each other, we hear ourselves perfectly, without that. Next question.
Noah Sargent in Fullerton, California, up next with here. If there's time, I have a boom overhead I'd like as a secondary Ruthless review.
Let's do it.
All right, so I am now on an NTG2. It is maybe 6 inches away from my face here, and I'm using noise assist kind of heavily. It's at
It sounds
10.
thin, like it sounds like you're going through a little hallway.
Oh yeah,
of sound.
I don't have any EQ or anything on it. Maybe let me check. Low cut's super low. It's only 40.
Well, what's
hertz,
the noise assist set to? Because the noise assist will start cutting into you at that point.
Yeah, it's at -10, so it's much higher. So I'm going to roll that back as I'm talking here. So I'm going to come down. This is 8.5. Here we go. Coming off. So this is without the noise assist now. This is 0 for the noise assist, and now I'm going to start rolling it back.
It's a good commercial for noise assist.
Yeah, right. I'm going to slowly start rolling this back up, and as everybody knows, if we have a way to, there's 6.
I think that there's so much in there that as the noise assist cuts in, it is cutting into your voice, like it's just pulling out your voice. I probably wouldn't. And how far away is it from your?
It's
right there.
Literally just out of frame.
And there's such a huge difference between when you're projecting your voice forward, and then as soon as you turn down to look at your controls there, it dropped off completely.
Yeah.
Well, noticeably.
Yeah, I wonder if this would serve better than underneath. But I mean, the distance wise, it should be about the same. I'm just, obviously there are some calls that I would rather have a microphone that's off camera, right? So
I don't think it's bad. I mean, here's the deal. You're going to be competitive with everybody else on a typical video call with the shotgun mic and noise assist. Compared to our mics, it doesn't quite hold up.
For sure.
So, but I think that as a hands-free kind of, I just sat down and did it. I think that would probably work just fine.
Awesome.
Next question.
We got one more left in the Ruthless review, but then a couple in regular. When listening to audio from office hours in my truck, I feel I need a dresser applied to a few voices, but when on proper headphones, it doesn't bother me. With a limited EQ of a truck, any thoughts or suggestions?
You mean compressor?
De-esser. Sorry, I spelled that.
Oh, de-esser.
Spelled that wrong.
I just read the words.
So go ahead and you just mean that when you're hearing us, you hear S's.
Yeah, sometimes like the sibilants. Yeah, is really strong, especially Jason specifically.
Oops.
And what kind of truck is it?
It's a Ram 1500 2016.
Yeah. Okay.
They didn't put the de-esser filter in the radio on that one.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it came out on the 2018 model. I think that was really exactly.
Let it go to 2019, the 5th gen.
You know what's funny is that when you start listening to S's, sibilants, you hear it all the time. I go in and out of being conscious to it, I think is the problem. But yeah, I think that has to do also with our proximity to the mics. That's where the sibilance usually comes from. Let's go to the last question.
She sells seashells. Brett Dykus in New York City is our final questioner. He says, does the panel have a recommendation for a karaoke platform? Use case would be a family activity on an iPad.
I don't know. So I don't know about the platform to use for that. I mean, so I actually bought. I used to be a DJ a long time ago, and I had a Denon actual karaoke where you put CDs in, and then it would actually play it out. But the CDs were built with the background. They had little.
It's advanced a little since then.
I know, exactly. It was great though. Well, the other thing that it had, by the way, is that it would take any music and it would just use the opposite of what we do with a balanced audio. If you swap
channel extract.
Yeah, so you just basically, what you can do is you can do the opposite of what you would do with balanced. You just swap the polarity and they'll just take everything out except for they'll take the voice out and leave everything behind, because usually the voice is in the center channel. So and so you can turn anything into that. I don't know which karaoke songs, I don't know which karaoke apps would be the best for that. We don't do, I have to admit, my family doesn't do, we do lip sync. Lip sync is our thing, not karaoke, because we're not good enough singers. We don't want to listen to each other sing, but we can have a lot of fun lip syncing, and we get pretty serious about it. I don't know if I've shown pictures. I mean, that's what this light is. That's what this light actually goes to, is the karaoke kit, and it goes with a smoke machine. So anyway, we take our lip sync pretty seriously. That's what I'm actually working on for Isadora, is to tie the lights into the signal, so the different lights are being affected by color and intensity based on the waveform, the different parts of the song, so that I can tie that in with the whole thing. So anyway, I don't know what karaoke it is. Anyone else have any other karaoke suggestions? Go ahead, Chris.
I will just say that karaoke is really advanced. The last time we went, the family went out. We went to a bar near our house. It was about 9 months ago, I think, 10 months, a year ago, and it's super advanced. They also had little covers on the mic, so when you were done, they could take it off and put a new cover on the mic, because it was very COVID-y. But they were doing karaoke, doggone it. But they have coming up next, and I'm gonna sing in 4 more people. I better get another beer before I hit the stage. It's super advanced what they do now. It's cool.
I have to admit, I did karaoke only. I've done it a lot for other people at party, because I had this one friend and I would use it as one of my things. But I did it once and I was like, I am so bad at this, and I just never did it again. It was like I just decided I was like, I thought I sang much better than I did, and by the end, all I wanted to do was stop singing. So that was the end of my karaoke experience. I was like,
my wife is a great singer.
Oh yeah.
She's really good.
All right. Thanks to our producers for a lot of great questions and keeping the whole thing rolling here, and thanks to to our panelists who came in and spent a little time hanging out with us. I think that the interesting thing is it's not just a Ruthless review, but it's just a really interesting conversation about mic audio and processing, and us thinking about all the little details and being able to hear it a little bit more. So it's worth doing. So anyway, thanks to our panelists for that, and being part of it and being willing to be guinea pigs for that process. Again, we expect to have a pretty fun show tomorrow, so I would highly recommend stopping by. And now we'll jump into After Hours.